Kira didn't care about the 5 million. That debt Finley was drowning in, it was her doing. Sooner or later, that money would circle back into her hands. Finley's voice dropped. Then transfer it to me. Now. Kira narrowed her eyes. Not until you tell me the secret. No way. I want the money first. Kira Olsen knew her uncle far too well. If he dared to demand 5 million from Isla for a single secret, then that secret had to be worth even more. She remembered how he once vanished after she wired a mere 200,000 as a deposit. If she transferred the full amount now, he'd just vanish again. She gave a cold smile. If you don't want to sell, then forget it. Then she waited, calm and patient. Predictably, Finley cracked. I'll sell, Kira, please. I'm out of time. They're going to kill me. I'm hiding out in the suburbs, terrified to show my face. Kira's tone remained even. Didn't you ask Isla for help? Of course I did. Finley growled. She claimed she didn't have that much. Rubbish. The Olsen family's worth billions. But she's on a high horse now, doesn't care about the family anymore. She thinks she's safe and isn't scared of me spilling the truth. That's why she turned her back on me. His voice shifted to pleading. Please, Kira, I'm begging you. You won't regret it. This secret, it's worth 10 million at least. 10 million, Kira echoed, her voice smooth. Then I need to know what makes it worth that much. The more detached she acted, the more desperate Finley became, letting more slip for fear she'd walk away. Kira was baiting him step by step, playing a delicate psychological game. Finley, paranoid and frazzled from hiding, finally snapped. It's about you and the Olsen family. Kira's brows lifted. Me? I've got nothing to do with the Olsen family. Still, her voice stayed soft, coaxing. Finley clammed up. No more unless I get the money. Kira sighed internally. Finley wasn't a fool. He had street smarts, and no amount of coaxing would pry more out of him. Where are you? She asked. I'll drop a location on WhatsApp. Bring the money. Fine. He sent the pin. Kira, already outside the villa, stood by the road. She gently touched her swollen cheek and was about to call a cab when a sleek black Bentley stopped in front of her. Startled, she saw the rear door open slowly. Inside was Louis, laptop on his lap, deep in an international video call. He spoke fluent French, his voice low and pleasant. When he glanced up and saw her cheek, his eyes narrowed. His voice turned sharp. J. Qualchos. Continuez. Asterisk, I have something urgent. You continue without me. Asterisk. He took off his headset, shut his laptop, and gestured to the seat beside him. Then, with calm efficiency, he opened the mini fridge in the car, pulled out an ice pack wrapped in a towel, and handed it to her. Use this. Kira blinked. Why do you have this in your car? Louis replied casually. Tom tends to get injured. We keep things ready. Tom, up front, nearly swerved. Asterisk, I do. Asterisk. The truth? Louis had tailed Kira after learning she was hurt. While still on his call, he asked Frankie to grab ice packs from a nearby supermarket. But Tom wisely stayed quiet. I see, Kira said. She climbed in, pressing the cold pack to her cheek. The burning eased. Her mind began to clear. But then, her gaze flicked to a supermarket receipt lying nearby. The timestamp showed the items had just been purchased. Her throat tightened. Suddenly, a rush of emotion surged up, bitterness she'd tried to bury. She remembered how, as a child, her classmate got hurt. He stayed stoic all day, but when he saw his mother at the gate, he burst into tears. She never understood that. Until now, how pathetic. She was supposed to get stronger with age. Instead, here she was breaking down over an ice pack. Kira turned away, pressing the towel harder into her cheek. Her eyes stung. She held back, but the pain she'd carried for years now broke its cage. She took a shaky breath, then whispered, Mr. Horton, can I borrow your shoulder for a moment? Louis froze, caught off guard. His expression shifted. Before she could retract the request, he coughed softly, then leaned toward her and patted his shoulder. You have 5 minutes. Okay. Kira leaned against him and let the tears fall. She didn't know she could cry this much. Since childhood, she'd never allowed herself to cry aloud. She knew no one would come comfort her. But this time someone did. When the 5 minutes passed, A damp stain had spread across Lewis's suit. Embarrassed, Kira straightened up, about to apologize, but Lewis said nothing. Instead, he handed her an anti-swelling cream and a capsule of Aeronase. Kira stared, stunned. The injury wasn't even that serious, but she accepted them anyway. "Thank you. You're welcome." Silence returned to the car. Kira wiped her eyes and sat upright. She felt lighter, like something had been released. Then she noticed the car was headed for a hospital. Quickly, she took out her phone. "Actually, can we go here instead?" She shared Finley's location. Lewis nodded. "Sure." The Bentley changed course and cruised through the quiet suburbs. Eventually, they arrived. It was an old, abandoned hospital. Street lamps flickered, casting long shadows across the derelict building. Kira typed a quick message. Asterisk, "I'm here." "Where are you?" Asterisk. Asterisk, room 303. "Hurry." Asterisk, Finley responded. Without hesitation, Kira walked toward the third floor. Lewis watched her, frowning, then followed, quiet but close. At room 303, Kira knocked. "Uncle, it's me." Finley's muffled voice came through the door. "Come in." Lewis stepped forward, intending to enter first. But Kira didn't wait. Silently, she pushed open the door. She didn't trust her uncle, never had. With Finley, everything was a scheme. She half expected a trap, so her senses were on high alert. The room was cloaked in darkness. No lights, just silence. Kira moved cautiously into the shadows. Suddenly, a shadow lunged at her from the dark. "Niece, if you don't give me the money, you're not leaving here alive." That voice, menacing and wild. Kira's eyes narrowed. Her reaction was swift and precise. Thud! With a sharp, forceful kick, she sent the figure crashing to the ground. The moment she struck, Lewis rushed in, pushing the door fully open. The darkness inside was disorienting. "Kira, are you okay?" His voice was tense. "I'm fine." Behind him, Tom pulled out a tactical flashlight. A powerful beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the room. Kira remained alert, eyes scanning the area. But as she glanced toward Lewis, she noticed his gaze had locked onto something behind her. His expression grim, his jaw tight, pupils slightly dilated. Kira turned, her instinct screaming. Lewis moved to block her, but she stepped around him. Then she saw it and froze. Finley lay flat on his back. His eyes were wide open, unblinking. His chest had been run through by a rusty steel bar. His clothes were soaked in blood, a macabre stain spreading across his torso. His limbs twitched slightly, lifeless spasms. For a moment, everything went still. Kira's breath caught. Her heart sank. Then footsteps. A voice rang out from the hallway. "Dad, I'm here." A young man burst in, backpack slung over his shoulder. Kira recognized him immediately. Connor, Finley's son. He was a year younger than Kira and Isla, currently studying at Oceanion University. Kira recalled how Finley once asked her for his tuition. She refused. She knew any money she gave would vanish into gambling debts. Connor was quiet and withdrawn, a side effect of growing up with a father like Finley. Now, he stormed into the room, his face flushed with frustration. "I scraped together 20 grand from friends. This is all I have. If this isn't enough, I'll disappear. I'll leave the country and cut all ties, Dad." Then he saw him. The bag fell from his hand, money scattering across the floor like a broken promise. He dropped to his knees, hands trembling as he reached for Finley's nose, checking for breath. A beat later, Connor recoiled, eyes wide with horror. He stared at Kira. Did you kill him?" Scrambling to the floor, he fumbled for his phone and dialed. "Hello, I need to report a murder. My father's been killed." The police arrived swiftly, bringing with them light and authority. They restored power to the abandoned building, flooding the halls with harsh yellow light. Inside room 303, Kira, Lewis, and Tom are being questioned. Connor sat off to the side, pale but composed. "My dad messaged me earlier, demanding $5 million. He said if I didn't get it, he'd be dead. I'm just a student. I scraped together 20,000, hoping it'd buy him time." He glanced toward Finley's body. "But by the time I got here, he was already dead." Tom gave his account. Mr. Horton and I accompanied Miss Olson to this meeting because the location was dark and unsafe. Miss Olson went in first, and then we heard a scuffle. We rushed in and found the man already on the ground. I turned on my flashlight. A detective stepped forward. Was he alive when you entered? Tom hesitated. He looked at Kira, unsure. The officer's tone sharpened. Perjury is a crime, sir. Before Tom could answer, Lewis spoke up calmly. When we got here, Miss Olson knocked, and a man's voice invited her in. Was it the victim's voice? The detective asked. I can't say for sure, Lewis replied. All eyes turned to Kira. Miss Olson, what did you hear? Tell us what happened. It was his voice, Kira said, gaze still fixed on Finley. Her tone was steady. He shouted at me, threatened me, and lunged. I kicked him away. That's all I remember. Connor's voice cut in. So you didn't mean to? It was self-defense. Kira met his eyes. I don't know. The detective frowned. What don't you know? Before she could answer, Lewis intervened. It was pitch black. She reacted instinctively. There's no clear evidence of how he died yet. He turned to Kira. Did you hear anything? Metal piercing flesh? A weapon? A scream? Kira shook her head. No, nothing like that. Connor looked confused. What does that mean? Kira's voice was cool and firm. It means I didn't kill him. The detective studied her carefully. Her face was pale, but her expression never cracked. Most people would have broken down at such a grisly sight. But she stayed composed, too composed. We've documented the scene and taken initial statements, the officer finally said. Miss Olson, for now, you're our primary suspect. We'll wait for the forensic team. If they confirm there was no foul play on your part, you'll be free to go. Kira nodded. Understood. She and Lewis began scanning the room. The abandoned building was coated in dust, but Finley had clearly been there a while. His prints, movements, and blood trail made finding clues harder. Then a shout came from one of the forensic techs. His phone's unlocked. Kira turned sharply as the officer accessed the device. He flipped through recent calls and messages, fingers scrolling rapidly, then stopped. A voice memo. He tapped play. Finley's voice came through the speaker, muffled and tense. Dear niece, about that secret.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Kira's heart leaped, and she quickly moved toward the police officer, wanting to hear clearly what he was saying. But in the next moment, a hand was extended from beside that police officer, hastily pressing the pause button. A cold rebuke rang out. The case is unsolved, and no evidence can be revealed in front of the suspect. Have you learned nothing from the police academy? The police officer cleared his throat hastily and said with a wry smile, I'm sorry, Dr. Sims. I shouldn't have done that. The one who spoke was a female forensic doctor with a serious expression in her eyes that reflected the shroud of peace and security of the nation. She said coldly, no more mistakes. Yes. Only then did the forensic doctor turn her gaze to Kira. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly, but she didn't say a word. She put on her gloves and carried her toolbox toward the corpse. Kira was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect it to be her. She was Kira's middle school classmate and her first female friend, Holly Sims. Holly's family had been forensic doctors for generations. From middle school, she already had a clear life plan, saying that she was born to uphold justice in the world. The naive words of that time became her lifelong goal. She attended a vocational school related to her field during high school, and at a young age, she had already become a respected forensic doctor. However, Kira looked down. Holly had some misunderstandings about Kira, and judging from her recent actions, it appeared that Holly still held a grudge. Kira sighed silently. A few minutes later, after Dr. Sims finished examining the body, she stood up and pronounced her verdict. The victim died instantly from a penetrating wound. There are signs of being hit in the chest. The time of death should be, she checked the time, between 30 to 35 minutes ago. The police officer immediately said, we received the emergency call exactly 30 minutes ago, so the victim died just as Miss Olson entered. He looked toward Kira. At present, all evidence points to you. Miss Olson, as for the voice you mentioned earlier, it could be that the heavy fall of the victim drowned out his cries. You just didn't hear it. Besides, there's a witness who proved that the victim did speak before you entered the room, so you are now the murder suspect. Please come with us to the police station for further investigation. Kira glanced at Holly and didn't resist. Okay. Seeing her compliance, the police officer walked up to her, preparing to take her downstairs. But at that moment, Holly scoffed and said, "Is a murder suspect not supposed to be handcuffed to prevent escape? Don't you even have the basic training of a police officer?" The police officer was stunned and immediately gave a bitter laugh. The lady was very cooperative in their investigation, and even assuming that she really was the killer, it would still be classified as excessive self-defense. It wasn't intentional, and she wasn't a violent offender, so handcuffs weren't necessarily required. But he didn't refute her. After all, it seemed quite clear that Dr. Sims was unhappy with this woman, hence she was picking on her. He cleared his throat and looked apologetically at Kira. At this point, Lewis, who was standing beside them, immediately took a step forward, intending to speak, but Kira subtly shook her head at him and then complied by extending her hands out. After the cold handcuffs were put on her, that was when the police officer started escorting her down the stairs. Lewis followed her. "I'll hire a lawyer for you immediately. Until the lawyer arrives, you have the right to remain silent." Kira nodded. "Just tell Grandma I'm going home for a couple of days." Understood. As they reached downstairs, Kira got into the police car and then suddenly felt a heavy presence beside her. She turned her head to see Holly instead of the police officer from earlier. As the car started, Kira asked calmly, looking straight ahead, "How have you been these years?" Holly looked at her. Her eyes were cold and deep. "I've been doing very well. Sorry to disappoint you." Kira was taken aback and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Back then, I—" "Shut up." Holly blurted out coldly. "You're a liar. I don't believe a word you say." Kira was speechless. She heaved a sigh quietly. Holly, however, asked, "The man from just now, is he your boyfriend?" Kira didn't want to lie. "He's my husband, legally speaking." Holly looked noticeably startled. "You married?" Kira felt as though she were a brute, so she said slowly, "My situation with him is a bit complicated. Holly turned her head away. "You did the right thing. Even if you'd sent me an invitation, I wouldn't have attended." Kira felt silent. Only then did she realize why Holly was angry. She assumed Kira had gotten married without letting her know. Kira shook her head and smiled bitterly. Just as she was about to say something, Holly's voice rose again. "So, he's the boy you wanted to marry back then?" Kira was taken aback for a moment. After a while, she said in a low voice, "No." Holly sneered. "You do get tired of the old and in with the new. You can even abandon that boy. So how could you possibly consider other friends?" Kira tried to explain. "Actually, back then, I said shut up." Holly's face flared up in anger. "Don't think that by bringing up our past friendship, I will help you. I have long seen your true color. You're nothing but a complete fraud." Kira was speechless. She didn't say anything else. However, Holly turned to look at her again. "Stop thinking about all these chaotic things. You should think more about your case. This case of yours is very complicated, and all the current evidence points to you. The traces on the body also point to you, and I won't help you conceal anything. Aren't you the least bit worried?" Kira smiled confidently. "Because you are here, I believe I'll be proven innocent. You once said that you wanted to uphold the justice of the world. You'll never let anyone be wronged under your charge, nor allow any criminals escape." Holly was slightly taken aback. She didn't know whether she was shocked by Kira's firm belief in her, or because she was reminded of her zealous words from the past. Her ears turned slightly red. But then she grumbled quietly again, "Don't sweet-talk me. I do not trust a single word you say. Kira, if you are the killer, I'll make sure justice is served." They soon arrived at the police station. Kira was suspected of murder and temporarily detained. Holly personally escorted her to the detention center and placed her in a single cell. She stood outside the cell, looking steadily at Kira. "Are you sure you didn't kill him?" "Yes." Holly frowned. "Then what's the deal with his voice?" Kira replied. "Could it be a recording on the phone?" Wasn't his phone found? Could you please check? Holly scoffed. The phone is in the police station. It won't be lost. It's important evidence. Having finished speaking, she looked steadily at Kira. You brought up that phone. Don't you want to know what message he left for you? Kira's eyes lit up. Will you tell me? Of course. Determining what to say next, Holly slowly said, It is a voice message left for you, so it's your right to be informed. Kira asked, What did he say? Holly replied formally, The department's regulations don't allow suspects to hear about the evidence. But don't worry, once the trial results come out, whether you're the murderer or not, I'll tell you. Kira was speechless. Holly, the little stickler, knew how to tease people now. Stepping back, Kira sighed. Holly warned her again. Stay here and believe in us. We won't wrong any good people. Leaving these words, she turned around and left. Although she was already off work, Holly didn't leave, but went straight to the morgue of the forensic department. When a duty officer saw her, he immediately asked, Dr. Sims, why are you here so late? Isn't the case not urgent? Why not dissect the body during the day tomorrow? However, Holly said, the earlier the cause of death is figured out, the sooner the suspect is cleared. The officer immediately said, What you mean is the suspect didn't kill this man. In front of Kira, Holly always had a fierce image, but now she said she's not that kind of person. Leaving this sentence behind, she went straight into the morgue. After all, the detention center was too plain, and it was uncomfortable to live in. The earlier she could clear Kira's name, the sooner she could be released. Holly yawned, took a glance at the body on the dissection table, and opened a drawer. She took out a small loaf of bread, took a few bites, and then started to work. She hadn't had time to eat dinner tonight. Sitting in a single cell of the detention center, Kira quietly pondered the events of the day. The death of Finley was indeed a surprise, catching her off guard. It couldn't have been any of her subordinates. They wouldn't set her up. Who was it? Kira furrowed her brows, suddenly thinking of a person. Isla. With Finley's secret, Isla could spend $150,000 each month to silence him. She failed to come up with this $5 million now, so she ended up taking the desperate measure of killing him. Was that it? Exactly what Finley had on Isla to make her so ruthless? No, that wasn't right. When Kira left the Olsen family house, Isla had already run up to the upstairs room and remained there. She must have had an accomplice. Kira's thoughts were very clear. However, she was confined here, and her cell phone was confiscated, so she couldn't contact someone outside. Her hope was on Holly. She didn't know how long it had been, but suddenly there were many footsteps approaching. Soon, several policemen stood outside her door. The young officer who arrested her today reported to another officer, Captain Lincoln, "This is the murder suspect, Kira Olsen." Captain Lincoln was a man in his 30s. His piercing eyes scanned her from top to bottom, and then he snapped at the young officer. With the evidence of this case already being so clear, what are you doing not interrogating the suspect immediately? Bring her to the interrogation room. The young police officer hurriedly opened the door and asked Kira to step out. Just as she stepped out, Captain Lincoln immediately pushed her. Stop dilly-dallying like this. Do you think you can escape the law? Kira staggered a bit, slightly knit her brows. Then she looked at Captain Lincoln coldly. What are you looking at? Move. Kira clenched her jaw, knowing better than to argue with him. She picked up her pace to the interrogation room. Captain Lincoln grabbed her arm, shoving her onto the interrogation chair, and then with a click he secured the security buckle on her. At this point, he was treating her like a violent criminal. Kira clenched her fists. Captain Lincoln sat across from her and asked formally, Name. Kira Olsen. Age. 22 years old. Gender. Kira took a deep breath, knowing that Captain Lincoln was insulting her. She wanted to get angry, but she held it back. Female. Captain Lincoln took a look at her and continued to ask, What is your relationship with the deceased? Kira said, He was my uncle. Captain Lincoln looked at the information in his hands. The deceased has been asking you for $5 million to pay off his gambling debts. So, you resented him, and when he was close to you, you kicked him away. Kira took a deep breath, feeling the malice from the other party. She looked at Captain Lincoln and slowly said, Is that supposed to be a leading question? Captain Lincoln immediately looked at her. I'm but stating facts. You just need to say yes or no. Kira lowered her gaze. I have the right to remain silent until my lawyer arrives. You have the rights, my ass. Captain Lincoln angrily slammed his notebook on the table and glared at her. This is Kira. Every citizen has the duty to cooperate with us in our investigation, especially suspects like you. Answer my question now. He stood up. We have all the material evidence, and there were no fingerprints other than yours at the scene. Finley was punctured from the back with a steel bar, so if you don't admit to accidental manslaughter, we will have to suspect you of premeditated murder. He came in front of Kira. Tell me, do you hold a grudge against the deceased? Kira gritted her jaw, raised her head, and looked at Captain Lincoln, saying no. You're lying. Captain Lincoln shouted, if you didn't hold a grudge when he charged at you, the subconscious reaction should be to evade. Why did you kick him? Kira clenched her fists. She moved out of the house when she was in middle school, so she had no sense of security and knew that no one would protect her. When others showed aggression, her intuitive action was not to evade, but to attack. But she knew that whatever she said now, it would be useless, so she simply kept her mouth shut. Seeing her like this, Captain Lincoln sneered well, you think you can get away with just staying silent? He immediately walked over and suddenly turned on a bright light, shining it directly into Kira's eyes. The light was so bright, and it made one subconsciously want to shield their eyes, but Kira's hands were pinned to the interrogation chair, so she couldn't protect her eyes. She slightly tilted her head, but she couldn't avoid the piercing light. Even with her eyes closed, they were still getting red. Just after 5 minutes, her eyes started to dry and sting, and she unconsciously shed a tear. The voice of Captain Lincoln came. Speak. Do you admit to accidental manslaughter or not? Kira took a deep breath. I didn't kill anyone. Captain Lincoln sneered. Still playing tough? Then let's shine the light for 2 hours. If you still don't confess, then you could spend the night here. Kira's eyes hurt more and more. Tears uncontrollably streamed down, making her want to rub them. Only a dozen minutes had passed, and it was already like this. If it was really going to blare at her all night, her eyes might be ruined. Meanwhile, outside the police station, Lewis arrived an hour later. After Holly had performed the autopsy, she found the cause of death was indeed from the puncture wound, with no discrepancy in the time of death. That was problematic. Indeed, all evidence pointed toward Kira. As she bit into a small bread roll, pondering over the evidence, she suddenly thought, has Kira had dinner tonight? She quickly submitted the autopsy report, took a few bread rolls, and headed downstairs. But as she arrived downstairs, she saw people in the interrogation room. She took a random glance and was surprised to see Kira on the monitor. Holly rushed over, spotting Kira's red and swollen eyes. Out of concern, she immediately rushed into the interrogation room and turned off the light. The room darkened, yet Kira's eyes still stung a bit. She looked up in a daze. Everything was white and blurry before her, and her ears caught Holly's angry query. What are you doing? Who allowed you to interrogate her? Captain Lincoln stood up. I did. Holly glared at him. Captain Lincoln, using torture is illegal. Captain Lincoln threw his cigarette on the floor and stomped on it with his shoe. I just turned on the spotlight. It was because she wouldn't confess. Holly's face darkened. There's no need to rush it. An overnight interrogation? Seriously? Captain Lincoln scoffed. If we don't interrogate her overnight, should we wait for them to conspire a story? Just to let you know, the person over there is a rich man, and I guess a lawyer has already arrived to handle her bail. Holly frowned. You don't have to worry. She doesn't meet the conditions for bail. Captain Lincoln said, how come? Don't these rich people love to have weird diseases? They can simply get a hospital certificate, and everything is settled. You've seen this kind of case before. What happens if she runs off abroad? Then who will be held responsible for the deceased? Holly replied firmly, I will. Captain Lincoln sneered. You will take responsibility? How? Holly pointed to her uniform. I'll take responsibility with this uniform I am wearing. Is that okay? Captain Lincoln didn't expect her to say this, so he fell silent for a moment. Suddenly, his phone made a noise. He glanced at it and looked up with a sneer. Dr. Sims, you are too naive. Follow me. Holly frowned and followed Captain Lincoln. Once they left the interrogation room, she finally said, Captain Lincoln, I'm aware of the previous case you've handled. That rich second generation used a heart disease as the reason for bail and then escaped abroad, making the case still unsolved. But you shouldn't generalize by stereotype. I don't know about others, but Kira Olsen is definitely not one of them. However, Captain Lincoln turned back and looked at her. Really? Her lawyer is already in the front lobby. I just received information that they're applying for bail, stating she's ill. In the front lobby, the lawyer was filling out the application for bail. Samuel followed behind Lewis, anxiously pacing around. Why did it have to be these today? It's that time of the month, and boss will be unwell. She must receive treatment. Lewis frowned. What kind of disease does she have? Samuel sighed. She has severe iron deficiency anemia. Iron deficiency? Lewis suddenly thought of Kira's WhatsApp name, Need Iron. What that the reason? Samuel anxiously said, Do you think iron deficiency anemia is a minor ailment? That you could just make it up by supplementing a bit during normal days? My boss's condition is different. Her disease is strange. Samuel sighed. There isn't a known reason for her anemia in medical terms. It's just that her body strangely doesn't absorb any iron elements. Therefore, she must go through regulated monthly infusions of iron elements forcibly. She is due for infusion tomorrow. Lewis frowned. What if she doesn't receive the infusion on time? Samuel tensed his jaw. At the very least, she'll shiver, her face will turn pale, and she'll feel very weak and dizzy. At its worst, she might even go into shock. After going into shock, if she didn't receive timely treatment, her life could be endangered. Lewis's expression turned serious. He turned to the lawyer. Do it as fast as possible. The lawyer made a bitter face. Mr. Horton, the process of obtaining bail is somewhat troublesome. Now that it's midnight, all the regular departments aren't at work. I'm afraid we can only complete it tomorrow. Lewis looked at Samuel. Samuel Morgan nodded. Tomorrow should be fine. Boss always has the iron transfusion 2 days in advance. As long as it doesn't exceed the day after tomorrow. Lewis let out a sigh of relief. The lawyer made another request, wanting to see Kira, but was also rejected on the grounds that it wasn't allowed in the middle of the night. He was told to come back tomorrow. Even though they were worried, they had no choice but to leave for now. Once they had left, Holly, with a stern face, walked over with Captain Lincoln. Captain Lincoln ordered, Show Dr. Sims the bail application form for Kira Olsen. Once Holly received the form, her eyes fell on the reason. It clearly stated, applying for bail due to severe iron deficiency anemia and the need for timely iron infusion to maintain her life. Holly clutched her fists tighter. Captain Lincoln glanced at her and sneered. See, your trusted friend didn't even bother to use a serious illness like heart disease as an excuse. Instead, she's using something as ridiculous as anemia. Dr. Sims, you are truly naive. These rich second-generation people have no bottom line. Holly shivered slightly, feeling as if she had been deceived once again. The cunning girl indeed said she trusted her, but then turned around and tried to secure bail using a ridiculous excuse like anemia. Kira was completely making a fool out of her. She took a deep breath and abruptly turned around, striding toward the interrogation room. Captain Lincoln followed beside her. These rich second-generation people are all selfish. They commit all sorts of wrongdoing and find various excuses to avoid punishment. I carefully investigated the records, and it was clear that the only reason she attacked the man was to prevent him from asking her for money. Of course, it was indeed manslaughter, since no one would expect a steel bar to be lying on the ground. I've strictly followed the rules by conducting an overnight interrogation so that she wouldn't have time to think of an excuse. It's only because she's your classmate that you gave her a shortcut. Dr. Sims, both you and I know that the real rule breaker here is you. You are too soft-hearted and haven't been in this profession for long. Don't let her deceive you. Who knows whether you'll still be able to wear this uniform in the future. Holly tensed her chin, sped up, and entered the interrogation room. Kira's eyes had improved quite a bit by this time. Her hands were also released, and someone had poured her a cup of water. She took a sip just in time to moisten her dry lips, right when Holly walked in with a stern expression. She asked, "Kira Olsen, you never really trusted me from the beginning, did you?" Kira was taken aback. "I do trust you." "You do?" Holly Sims clenched her fists. "Then what is this bail you're applying for? And you lied about having anemia. That's something we can easily verify." Only then did Kira realize it was time to get an iron infusion. That was something that Samuel always remembered for her, and she had almost forgotten about it. She lowered her eyes. "I really do have anemia." "You're still lying." Holly was about to explode with anger. Suddenly, she grabbed Kira's hand, took out a needle, pierced Kira's finger, and collected some capillary blood. After doing all this, she didn't forget to disinfect it with an alcohol sponge, then furiously let go of Kira's hand. She stood upright. "I'm going for a check now. I hope you didn't lie to me." Kira hurriedly said, "I..." Before she could finish speaking, Holly had already turned around and left. Kira could only hear her speaking to Captain Lincoln outside the door. "Her condition isn't very good. Even if we must interrogate her throughout the night, can we do it without using the light?" "All right, out of respect for Dr. Sims." Kira sighed quietly. Holly had vouched for her, saying that she wouldn't be released on bail. Samuel immediately rebutted Holly. It was no wonder she was so angry. Never mind. She should be able to keep up with the demands that her condition put on her body for another 2 days. If Holly could find evidence to prove her innocence within those 2 days, perhaps she shouldn't apply for bail after all. Upstairs, Holly entered the equipment room and placed the blood sample she had drawn from Kira's finger into the machine. Now all she could do was wait for the machine to analyze the various elements in the blood. This would take 20 minutes. At this moment, her cell phone suddenly rang. The call was from a detention center. She picked up and heard a voice from the other side. "Dr. Sims, we heard you're at the station and decided to give you a call. We have a patient here who isn't feeling well. Could you come and take a look?" Holly immediately stood up. "I'll be right there." Even though a forensic doctor and a medical doctor weren't the same, she could still diagnose minor illnesses. She put on her coat and left. She soon arrived at the detention center. This place held suspects who hadn't been tried by the court, and some prisoners with sentences of less than 3 months. Kira had just been placed in a solitary cell here. Holly took a few steps forward and arrived at the cell door indicated by the guard who had called. She then put on a mask and gloves, stepped inside the cell, and coldly asked, "Who's not feeling well?" "It's me." An unfamiliar yet familiar voice made Holly slightly frown. She turned her head and saw a middle-aged woman in a prison uniform, sitting there with her hands on her belly and an expression of pain on her face. "Doctor, my belly hurts so bad. Can you help me?" Holly was taken aback. Wasn't this woman Poppy Hill, Kira's mother? She had once attended a parents' meeting for Kira in middle school. Holly immediately walked over and asked with concern, "Auntie, what's the matter?" Poppy was suspected of perjury, but as the case wasn't severe, she had been sentenced to 15 days in detention. She grabbed Holly's hand and said, "My belly hurts so badly." Holly immediately reached out to touch her belly, not daring to underestimate the situation. "Is it here? I'll take you to the hospital." "Oh, don't touch me. It hurts so much." But Poppy looked around with a pained expression and said, "There's no need to go to the hospital. I just have a cold." "Officer, can you take me to a solitary cell? My moaning and groaning here is disturbing everyone's rest." Holly immediately nodded. "Okay." Just as she was about to help Poppy out, someone else in the room suddenly yelled out, "Oh, my belly also hurts so bad. Officer, could you also take me to the solitary cell?" The rest of the inmates immediately laughed. "My belly hurts as well." "Hey, but I'm different. I have a headache. Can I go to the single ward too?" Holly was speechless. She frowned, about to say something, when someone looked over at Poppy and said, "We all eat the same food, but how come you're the only one who got sick? It's been 5 days inside, but you've been sick for 4 of them. Are you more delicate than the rest of us? How come in our ward, you're in such pain, but the moment you get to a single cell, you're fine and snoring away?" Holly frowned, realizing what was going on. Instantly, she looked at Poppy. Poppy's face instantly turned stiff, and then she wailed in despair. I really don't feel well. Holly clenched her jaw. 111, take you to the hospital then. If the tests show that you're okay and it's all an act, I'm afraid you'll have to stay here a few more days. At these words, Poppy suddenly became nervous. She didn't want to be locked up here at all. And here the cellmates either farted or picked their feet every night. They also slept in all kinds of crazy positions. On her first night, she couldn't sleep at all due to the noise. So she thought of a solution. But wouldn't it expose her if she went to the hospital? Poppy gave Holly a pleading smile. I don't need to go to the hospital. It's just a minor illness. I can take it. I'll live. Holly knew it. Aunt, are you faking it? Poppy ran to her bed, lifted the blanket, and crawled in. Hey, what kind of language is that for a little cop? How was I pretending? I just had a stomach ache, and now I'm better. What's wrong with that? You won't let me recover from an illness. Holly was frustrated. The female prisoner next to her cursed. You really have thick skin, you old rogue. You're tricking people. However, Poppy retorted, what was that compared to my daughter? I'm nothing compared to her. That little slut cheated me so badly. She'll die in misery. Just thinking of Kira made Poppy grind her teeth in hatred. Who would have thought that the girl she tried to turn into a good-for-nothing was drive south? Holly only found these words irritating. With her jaw set, she closed the jail door and quickly went upstairs. Soon, she had in her hands the latest blood test report. Upon seeing the data on it, her face darkened. The iron content was normal. Kira wasn't anemic at all. In that instant, Holly trembled in anger. She went straight to the interrogation room, downstairs, and threw the blood report at Kira. Kira, do you enjoy tricking me time and time again? Kira didn't look at the test results. Instead, she sighed. I'm not anemic now, but give it a few days. She had wanted to say that earlier, but Holly left without even hearing her out. The anemia Kira experienced was strange. Each time her period came, a large amount of iron was lost, so iron supplements needed to be taken every month in advance. As long as she didn't bleed on a regular day, her iron content was normal. After visiting many hospitals, she was finally diagnosed with a rare genetic disease. Holly clearly hadn't heard of such a thing and found it laughable. Do you think I'll believe the crap you're saying? Kira, can't you at least come up with a better excuse when lying to me? Kira tried to explain weakly. I didn't lie to you. You didn't lie to me? I've studied medicine for years and never came across a case like yours. Kira clenched her jaw and fell silent. Her disease situation was indeed odd, and it was normal for Holly to be skeptical. Any further explanation would be pointless. Seeing that Kira had fallen silent, anger surged within Holly. Captain Lincoln by her side sighed. Dr. Sims, she's been like this all night, not saying a word. Let go. I'll have someone take her back to jail. Otherwise, our people will have to stay overnight, and we won't get anything out of her anyway. Before he'd even finished speaking, Holly yelled angrily, You guys go. I'll stay up with her. I want to see how many more preposterous lies she will tell. Captain Lincoln fell silent. He cleared his throat. All right, we'll go get some sleep. If she confesses to anything, call us immediately. After the group left, only Kira and Holly were left in the interrogation room. Holly sat across from her, staring at her. Why did you lie? Why did you apply for bail? Is it because all those doubts you mentioned don't exist at all? You're just using me, hoping I'd testify that you're not the murderer. Kira said, Don't worry. I won't agree to bail within the next 2 days. After that, she would need treatment. Holly was taken aback. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Do you think saying that will make me forgive you? She turned away, wiping the corner of her eye. Kira didn't speak anymore. The night had deepened. Whether it was the impending menstrual period or the lack of rest late at night, Kira felt a dull ache in her head and a mild pain in her lower abdomen. She stayed up all night like this. By the next morning, Kira began to feel increasingly dizzy. Damn it! Lack of rest accelerated her period, and she started to become anemic. Holly hadn't slept all night, and her mind was in chaos. As dawn broke, she glared fiercely at Kira. Just as she was about to say something, she noticed Kira's pale face, devoid of any color. Holly stood up abruptly, panic-stricken. Kira, what's wrong with you? Kira felt a dull pain in her lower abdomen, but it was bearable. She grabbed Holly's wrist and said, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll give you a hand point one. Holly supported Kira's arm and guided her to the bathroom, quietly waiting outside. However, she couldn't help but feel worried. She noticed how pale Kira's face looked and her cold sweat. Could she really be anemic? Meanwhile, in the visitation room at the detention center, Poppy came over with a smile on her face and flattered her daughter. Isla, how come you have time to see me? After saying that, she added, you shouldn't have come. This isn't a good place. It could bring bad luck. Despite her avid enthusiasm, she only received a faint smile from Isla, followed by a hesitating gesture. Poppy immediately expressed her concern. What's wrong? You look so dreadful. Did something happen? Her face darkened. Is it Kira again? Did she disrespect you again? Isla gave a bitter smile. Yes, it's about Kira, but she hasn't been disrespectful. She has gotten into trouble. Oh, that's nothing, Poppy scoffed. With her devil-may-care disposition, it's only a matter of time she gets herself into trouble. Who did she offend this time? Did she get a lesson? A smirk of delight came over her face at the thought of Kira's misfortune. Isla was choked and found Poppy more and more foolish. She had always been like this, wearing everything on her sleeve, completely oblivious to the need to conceal her emotions. Isla couldn't figure out how on earth Poppy had managed to swap her place with Kira. It had to be by some astounding stroke of luck. Isla cast her eyes down after a brief flicker in them. It's not that she offended someone. She committed murder and is now in police custody. What great news! Poppy immediately brightened up. Will that reprobate be sentenced to death? She won't bother you anymore. Isla was speechless. She glanced at Poppy with sympathy, then coughed slightly. She killed Finley Hill. Why should I care who she? Who? Isla, who did you say? Finley? Did I hear you wrong? Poppy lunged at the table, her emotional state drastically heightened. She only had one brother. Even though he used to mess things around, Poppy loved him dearly. Isla sighed. Actually, you can't really blame Kira. I heard that Finley demanded $5 million from her. When she refused, during the tug-of-war, Finley accidentally fell onto a steel bar and was pierced through the chest. He died on the spot. Aunt Hill, please don't get overexcited. Kira is, after all, drive south in your daughter. She should indeed be very rich, but $5 million is still no small sum. It's only normal for her to not want to give it. Nonetheless, Poppy's eyes bulged out, her eyeballs bloodshot. She stood up abruptly. That ungrateful creature. She killed Finley over $5 million. I shouldn't have raised her up. I should have drowned her as soon as she was born. Where's she? I'm going to kill her. I'll take revenge for Finley. Her excessive emotional reaction prompted an immediate warning from a nearby police officer. After a while, Poppy calmed down a bit, but the fury in her eyes showed no sign of abating. Isla said, Aunt Hill, the two involved are both your close relatives. I think you have a right to know, so I told you. Please don't do anything rash. Poppy appeared dazed, tears streaming down from her reddened eyes. She reassured Isla. Don't worry, Isla, I'm fine. I'm fine. Only then did Isla speak. All right, you should go back. H1 go and see Kira. Why bother visiting her? A death row inmate. I can't wait to see her executed. Poppy uttered venomously. Isla stared at her in disbelief. Aunt Hill, Kira is charged with manslaughter. The maximum sentence is 10 years. How could that be? That's letting her off too easily. Seeing how Poppy completely missed the point of her statement, Isla sighed. Aunt Hill, Kira didn't do it on purpose, and she must be scared as well. If you happen to see her in the detention center, remember to comfort her. Poppy finally processed what she had heard. She's also held here. Isla nodded. Yes, she hasn't been sentenced yet, so she's temporarily detained in a single room. It should be close to where you are, right? The multi-bed wards and single rooms were all in one place. Poppy narrowed her eyes, revealing a ferocious look. That's good. Isla stood up. Aunt Hill, it's about time. I need to go. Poppy was reluctant to see her leave. Isla, you should marry Jake and settle down with the Horton family happily. Take care of yourself, and don't concern yourself with me. But Isla had already left the visiting room, completely disregarding her words. She left the visiting room and was preparing to leave the police station when she saw her old classmate, Holly, anxiously standing near the restroom door. A policewoman nearby asked, Dr. Sims, the lawyer of the suspect, Kira, came early in the morning again, asking about our decision on her pretrial release due to medical reasons. Judging by the suspect's looks just now, she seems to be really anemic. So is it approved or not? Holly frowned upon hearing this. She anxiously looked into the restroom and remembered Kira's frailty. She was about to say, I agree, when Captain Lincoln walked over. Captain Lincoln had also heard the conversation, so he frowned at once. Already pretending to be ill, Holly retorted, She's not pretending. Captain Lincoln snorted coldly. Dr. Sims, have you forgotten how she fooled you yesterday? You believe this? I remember you made an oath last night that if she gets a pretrial release, you would quit the police force. You didn't forget that, did you? Holly clenched her jaw. Captain Lincoln, she really isn't feeling well. But Captain Lincoln wasn't convinced. Very interesting. She's been detained for just 1 day, and she's already not feeling well. The delicate little miss can't take a bit of suffering, huh? As Holly was about to reply, Isla stepped forward. Hello, are you discussing my sister Kira? They all looked at her. Holly frowned slightly. What are you doing here? Isla looked somewhat anxious as she pulled Holly aside. Dr. Sims, about my sister's health. Holly immediately took on a serious expression. She knew that Isla was Kira's sister. In middle school, after Isla found out about their real identity, she started to behave smarter and stopped bullying Kira in school. Hence, Holly wasn't aware of the bad relationship between the two sisters. She moved aside with Isla and asked with concern, What's wrong with Kira? Isla sighed. She probably got her period. Every month during this time, she suffers, and it's natural for women. You understand. Holly immediately relaxed. As long as Kira wasn't ill. Right afterward, Isla grabbed her hand. Holly, we were classmates back in middle school. Can you help Kira? Agree to her pre-trial release, will you? Holly's face suddenly darkened. Isla didn't seem to notice, but continued. We women all go through this every month. We look pale and anemic. We're all old classmates. Let's sign the papers. We promise not to leave. Holly abruptly pulled her hand away. You're dreaming. This is a law enforcement agency. You can't negotiate prices here. She looked at the restroom forcefully, then at Captain Lincoln. She doesn't qualify for pretrial release. Send her straight back to the detention center. Only then did Captain Lincoln look satisfied. Good. You understand. Holly didn't want to stay any longer and immediately walked away, up the stairs toward the forensic department. When Kira emerged from the washroom, looking pale, there was a policewoman waiting for her. As soon as she saw Kira, she scoffed. Miss Olson, is it just your period? We're all women here. Stop the act. Get back and wait for the next trial. Kira's legs seemed weak as she was hurried back to the single-person cell. The moment she entered, everything before her eyes turned black as she collapsed. Upstairs, Holly was getting more and more frustrated, but she still couldn't get over the image of Kira's pale, bloodless face from her mind. Unable to suppress her kindness, she poured a cup of honey water from her flask and walked to the detention center. Kira Olson, wake up. What's wrong with you? The policewoman noticed Kira's condition and nudged her. Dazed, Kira opened her eyes. The usually strong-willed woman was trembling from weakness. Please help me to the bed. All right. The policewoman quickly assisted her to the bed and asked, How do you feel now? Kira was in poor condition, and she wouldn't pretend even for Holly's sake. She said, I'm anemic. Get Holly Sims to do another blood test. It should show up now. At her words, the policewoman frowned, scrutinizing Kira. Dr. Sims was angry. She probably won't come again. Kira pursed her lips. Then you could draw my blood and send it for testing. The policewoman said, Fine, I'll get someone from the forensic department. Having said that, she left the cell. As she was leaving, she was suddenly stopped by Poppy Hill. Excuse me, officer. The policewoman turned to her. What is it? Poppy pointed to the ward where Kira was. That's my daughter. Is she unwell? Can I go look after her? The policewoman was taken aback. She's your daughter? Were mothers and daughters sharing prison cells these days? Poppy nodded. Yes, that's my daughter. You can check our relationship. The policewoman took out her phone, logged into the system, and verified their identities. They were indeed mother and daughter. The policewoman thought for a moment, recalling Kira's condition, and said, "All right." Kira, lying on the single bed, had just closed her eyes when the door was opened again. Did the forensic doctor come so soon? She barely lifted her eyelids to see a figure walking in, followed by a chilling voice. "Kira, don't be afraid. Mom is here." Kira stiffened. Perhaps due to her weakness, memories of when she was 5 years old flooded into her head. At such a young age, without enough warm clothes in winter, she often caught colds. Every time she got sick, Poppy would lock her away, not letting her go outside. Whenever Mrs. Olson found out, she would always come to see her and give her medication. But the moment Mrs. Olson left, Poppy would rush over to her, grab her throat, and force her to throw up the medicine she had just taken. While beating the defenseless 5-year-old child, she furiously berated her in her ear. "You don't deserve medicine. Just live with your fever. Why don't you die? You deserve this, bitch. Aren't you mighty? How dare you touch Isla? You've hit her several times, and you dare to defy me, throwing me into this jail. I'll choke you." The malicious voice from her memory overlapped with the real-time murmur from the woman, causing Kira to instinctively huddle, just like when she was a child, wishing she could reduce herself to as small as possible to fend off the outside pressure. It was like she was back to being a 5-year-old in that cold, dark basement. The room was dimly lit. She was suffering from extreme dizziness caused by anemia, which made her unable to distinguish between reality and memory, with pleas for mercy from her dreams escaping her lips. As a 5-year-old, she pleaded in a soft whisper, "Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gotten sick. Please stop hitting me." But sharp pain still coursed through her body. The woman in front of her still pinched her arms, abdomen, and thighs mercilessly. Kira pressed her lips together tightly. By age 7, she understood that pleading was useless, and she could only endure. The pain persisted. The curses were unabated. "Die, die. You kill my brother. You'll pay with your life." When Kira was 9 years old, she learned to resist, even trying to push away the woman forcefully. But she wasn't strong enough, and it only brought more vicious beatings. Then there was the toleration at 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, until she was 13 and had moved on to high school. Although she was still lean, she had surpassed Poppy's height. She pushed the woman away, saying, "Since you despise me as your daughter, I'm leaving." She packed a few worn-out clothes and, without hesitation, left the Olson family. There was no home for her in the world, but the outside was vast and boundless. Everywhere but the Olson family could be her home. She grew up, and she could protect herself. Kira abruptly opened her eyes, waking up from her nightmare. She looked sharply at Poppy, who was right in front of her. Poppy, who was currently pinching her waist, faltered and immediately reached for Kira's throat. "Bitch, what are you looking at? You should die. You have to pay for killing my brother." Exhausting all her strength, Kira grabbed Poppy's wrist and forcefully pushed her away. Poppy retreated 2 steps, falling hard onto the ground. Just as she was about to charge again, a voice came from the doorway. "What are you two doing?" Poppy turned around to see Holly, wide-eyed, standing at the door. She then unhurriedly entered the room. Her gaze swept across Poppy and Kira, confused. Was she hallucinating? Were these 2 women fighting? Didn't they claim to be mother and daughter? Kira had exhausted all her strength. She was sprawled out on the bed again, without the energy to even move a finger. She whispered, "You're just in time. I'm anemic. Even if you don't release me on bail, you must immediately take me for intravenous infusion and give me iron supplements." Before Holly could speak, Poppy sat down on the floor. "You're anemic? With the strength you've shown? You push me. I say you're faking it. You fought in here, and you'll be punished." Holly, who just entered, had seen Kira open her eyes and push Poppy away. The ruthlessness in Kira's eyes made Holly feel as if she didn't know her anymore. Remembering Isla's words, she clenched her fists and declared, "Kira, I won't be deceived by you this time." She turned and called over the prison guard. They were fighting. "Immediately take them to solitary confinement." At the entrance of the police station, the lawyer received the news that bail had been denied, and he said helplessly, "Mr. Horton, if we want to appeal, we would have to wait until tomorrow." Lewis frowned at this, looking at Samuel. Samuel said, "We can wait another day, but the day after is definitely the last chance." Lewis nodded, clearly feeling unsettled. Just then, the policewoman who was just inside came over and said to Captain Lincoln, "Captain Lincoln, I think Kira looks really unwell. Women do tend to get anemic during their period. Should we check again?" Hearing this, Samuel, who was about to leave, stopped in his tracks, turning panicked. Did Kira's cycle start? "We're doomed. Lewis's expression darkened. "What's wrong?" Samuel was pacing anxiously. "If Kira doesn't get her iron supplements on time, she must have severe anemia now. But what do we do now without bail? What do we do?" Without hesitation, Lewis turned and rushed towards the holding area. Samuel was stunned. When he regained his senses, he hurried to Lewis's side. "Mr. Horton, are you planning on breaking in?" Without saying a word, Lewis walked straight from the lobby to the detention center at the back, answering with his actions. Samuel said, "You are quite bold. Surely, this isn't acceptable." Without pausing, Lewis asked coldly, "What else can I do? Can your boss wait until tomorrow?" "Definitely not." Samuel followed him. "She can't last until tomorrow. There was this time when iron wasn't administered in time, and she fell into shock. We barely managed to resuscitate her." Having said that, he got anxious and added angrily, "Her illness is indeed strange. Anyone else would think we're lying to them. We can't wait any longer. For her, let's risk it." As he spoke to himself, Lewis had already rushed toward the detention center. The prison guards blocked the entrance. "This is a prison. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed in. Please leave immediately." Lewis ignored them and made his way inside. Having sensed something was wrong from the entrance, Captain Lincoln followed them and drew his gun at Lewis. "Mr. Horton, stop immediately or I'll shoot." Lewis turned around and glanced at him, his expression calm. Samuel was trembling with fear. Looking at the dark entrance, he felt his legs shaking. It was so terrifying. Seeing the two of them halt, Captain Lincoln breathed a sigh of relief. He knew Lewis's position. The person in charge of the Horton family couldn't be arrested so lightly. He asked, "Mr. Horton, what brings you here?" Just as Samuel was about to say that he was here for Kira, Lewis stopped him. "I was looking for the bathroom, but I ended up here by mistake." Samuel was dumbfounded. He looked at Lewis in shock, his heart sinking. Indeed, the marriage of Kira and Lewis was like a joke. Faced with a gun, it made sense that Lewis didn't want to risk his life. But Samuel couldn't abandon his boss. As Lewis turned and began to walk away, Samuel stayed where he was. Captain Lincoln frowned at him. "Mr. Morgan, aren't you leaving with him?" Samuel was terrified, but he took a deep breath. "I'm not." Before he could finish saying, disaster struck. Lewis, who was standing next to Captain Lincoln, suddenly took action. He quickly moved to the captain, grasping the latter's trigger hand. The captain's hand went limp involuntarily, and the gun ended up in Lewis's hand. Captain Lincoln tried to strike back and reclaim his gun, but the next moment he suddenly felt an icy sensation on his forehead. Lewis was pointing the gun at him. Captain Lincoln was shocked. He was completely dumbfounded. When dealing with vicious criminals, he would never make such a mistake, but Lewis and Samuel were notable businessmen from Ocean Ion. They were the type who were always accompanied by bodyguards when they were out. He never expected that Lewis would attack a police officer. Samuel was also stunned, watching Lewis in a daze. He was thinking that at worst, he could lie on the ground and refuse to move, forcing these people to draw blood from Kira. But he didn't expect Lewis to resort to this. This was against the law. "Mr. Horton, if you put down the gun now, I won't hold you responsible." Captain Lincoln held up both hands. He was experienced and remained calm. Lewis's voice said, "Sorry, but I'm desperate to save someone." Without waiting for Captain Lincoln to respond, he commanded those in front of him, "Get out of the way." The few individuals at the entrance of the detention center didn't dare to stop him and hastily moved out of the way. Holding Captain Lincoln hostage, Lewis walked straight inside. "Samuel, Agape followed behind him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He felt like he had been forced to participate in a criminal act. Now, if he said he wasn't an accomplice, these police officers certainly wouldn't believe him. Meanwhile, Kira was still lying on a threadbare bed. She looked at the two officers entering her cell. They were there to take her and Poppy to solitary confinement. She turned to Holly to explain once again. I really am anemic. Indeed, she looked pale. Holly hesitated once more. At that point, Poppy collapsed onto the floor. I'm the same. Oh my, I'm so dizzy. I'm about to die. Help me. Holly really couldn't tell who was faking it anymore. Poppy's performance was very convincing. Kira didn't seem to be pretending either. As she hesitated, footsteps and startled exclamations from the other officers rang out outside the door. Holly promptly turned her head, only to see Lewis holding Captain Lincoln hostage as he walked in. His gaze quickly locked onto the jail cell where Kira was held. His eyes pierced through the iron bars and fixated on Kira herself. Her face was as pale as a sheet, and she lay weakly on the bed, seemingly without the strength to even lift a finger. Lewis's pupils constricted. She always bravely stood tall, regardless of the circumstances. She never bowed her head. Yet now, she couldn't even sit up due to her frailty. Concerned, he said furiously, "You're abusing a suspect. I'll hold you responsible for this." Holly retorted, "We didn't. They fought with each other. Everything we've done is according to regulations." Samuel, following Lewis, saw how frail Kira was, and his eyes welled up with tears. "Boss, we're here to help you." He glared at Holly. "My boss is on her deathbed, and you still want to punish her? Do you even have humanity left?" Captain Lincoln scoffed. "I've never heard of a woman dying from her period. If you're pretending to be ill, at least choose another disease to fake." Holly took a deep breath, agonizing for them. She looked at Kira. "Kira Olsen, there's no use running if you committed the murder. If you didn't kill the person, we'll restore your innocence. Even if you don't trust us, you should trust these officers. Why make such a fuss?" She continued earnestly. "Mr. Horton, please back down. I'll plead on your behalf, and Captain Lincoln won't pursue your responsibilities. But if you really break out of prison, the consequences will be unimaginable. Kira, stop pretending to be ill." Kira gave a bitter smile. "Holly, you keep saying one don't trust you. But what about you? Do you trust me?" Holly was taken aback. "Kira says, you don't." But Holly's eyes went red. "Why don't I trust you?" "It's because you continuously deceived me. It happened years ago, and it's happening again now. Haven't you tricked me enough?" Kira didn't speak anymore. Lewis, still holding Captain Lincoln hostage, entered the infirmary. "Can you walk? Let's leave." "I can." Kira, trembling, tried to get up from the bed, but found that she just couldn't muster the strength. Lewis immediately looked at Samuel. "Come over here." Samuel walked to his side. "Do you know how to use a gun?" "Yes." Lewis kept the gun pointing at Captain Lincoln while handing it to Samuel, who took over as Captain Lincoln's captor. Samuel was dumbfounded. As he marveled, he saw Lewis walk to the bed, bend over, and picked up Kira. Immediately after, he turned around without hesitation and left. Samuel, dragging Captain Lincoln with him, followed closely behind. Holly and the rest of the officers immediately trailed after them. The large group created a commotion as they arrived at the hospital. At this point, Kira was unconscious, and the doctor took her blood for an urgent test. Holly immediately followed the doctor and instructed the other officers, "I'll watch the whole process to prevent them from bribing the doctor to tamper with the blood test report." With so many officers surrounding the hospital, all doctors were very nervous. So, the urgent blood test results came out in 10 minutes. Holly immediately snatched it and looked at the numbers. The rest of the blood report was normal, but the iron level had dropped drastically to a terrifyingly low level. Holly had never seen such poor data in a living person before. With the report in her hand, she walked numbly back to the ward. The atmosphere was tense. Many police surrounded the ward, and Samuel held on to Captain Lincoln without letting go. On their way here, Captain Lincoln had tried countless times to escape from Samuel's hold, But this unreliable-looking guy didn't give him an opportunity. Seeing Holly approaching, Captain Lincoln said, "Samuel Morgan, the medical report is out. If you continue to hold me hostage, you'll no longer be forgiven. Our snipers are ready. As soon as it's confirmed that the suspect isn't sick, they can immediately kill you all. I advise you to put down your gun and surrender right now." Samuel scolded him, "Quit pretending." Captain Lincoln was furious. "Dr. Sims, since these people are stubborn, tell everyone what the medical results are, so these people can stop pretending. Can anemia really cause death?" Everyone immediately looked at Holly. She tightened her jaw and said solemnly, "Kira's iron levels are abnormal, and her life is in danger." "Captain Lincoln, we made a mistake." Captain Lincoln was stunned. "What?" Holly stepped forward and showed the report to Captain Lincoln. The normal level of iron in a female's blood is 7.8-32.2 gmol/L. However, Kira's iron level is just 1, which means she has a severe iron deficiency, and her life is in danger. Captain Lincoln was dumbfounded. Then, a reprimanding voice suddenly drowned in. "What's going on? Shouldn't she get a drip yesterday? Why is she only getting iron infusion now?" Everyone turned to look, and a gentle-looking man around 30 with gold-rimmed glasses walked toward them. He was wearing a white lab coat and looked at Samuel with a grim face. "She can't remember the time, but did you forget it too?" Feeling guilty when scolded, Samuel looked at Holly. "It's all because of this forensic doctor. She kept insisting that Kira was fine, even after Kira fainted." With growing anger, he said, "Do you need a person to die before agreeing that there is something wrong?" Being reproved, Holly clenched her fists, so embarrassed that she wished she could crawl into a hole. She looked into the ward. Kira was getting the drip. Her face was pale, and she looked lifeless. Holly felt like crying. Why didn't she trust Kira? She slapped herself out of anger, with tears welling up in her stubborn eyes. "It was my fault." Samuel didn't know what to say. He hadn't expected his words to bring the young woman to tears, which also stopped him from saying any more hurtful words. He then turned to Captain Lincoln. "Isn't it because you have a stereotype against rich kids? Just because some rich kids got away in past cases, does that mean all rich kids are bad people? Let me tell you this. Because we are rich, we haven't encountered any trouble since we were little. So we have even more principles when doing things." Captain Lincoln's mouth twitched. Samuel felt it was not enough. Along the way, he had been sacred of Captain Lincoln snatching the gun. If that happened, he would fail to save his boss, and they would also be in danger of being thrown in jail. Therefore, he raised his voice even more. "If you hadn't refused to let her go, would we have done this? We are all lawful citizens. You still want to use snipers on us now? Here, aim at me." He handed the gun back to Captain Lincoln, pointing at his own chest, saying, "Kill me with one shot. Go ahead, shoot. If my boss dies because of you, I don't want to live either." Captain Lincoln didn't know what to say. The officers around them were all dumbfounded. Looking at the gun in his hand, Captain Lincoln glanced at the situation in the ward, still somewhat puzzled. But how could someone be so severely anemic? The police officer following him was also confused. Yes, her blood report was normal just yesterday, and today she suddenly got worse. In games, health bars drop gradually. Why did her health suddenly plummet, just like a character with a tiny health bar? Samuel couldn't believe what he heard. He twitched his mouth and was about to reprimand the two when Holly spoke. "What disease does she have?" Her voice was full of worry, and Samuel felt bad about scolding them. Upon hearing that, Matthew, the doctor, frowned. "Didn't I tell you already? She has genetic iron deficiency anemia. It's a rare condition. Her body doesn't absorb any iron. She has to solely rely on drips." Holly anxiously asked, "How could she have such a condition? I haven't heard about it before." Matthew adjusted his glasses, and his nice-looking eyes were piercing behind the lenses. He calmly said, "Have you heard of all the diseases in the world? Even if you don't believe it, when she became ill, didn't she have all sorts of symptoms? You didn't notice?" Holly lowered her head. "I'm sorry," Matthew said. "What use is your apology to me? You should apologize to the person inside." Holly tightened her jaw and looked into the ward, but she didn't dare to go in. She hesitated for a long time and finally just stood outside. Matthew had already entered the ward. As soon as he entered, he saw Lewis standing next to the bed. Lewis slowly turned his head. Their eyes met, and none of them spoke for a while. Lewis's deep gaze scanned Matthew, and he soon noticed the latter's special feeling toward Kira. He asked with a displeased tone, "And you are?" "Her attending doctor." After Matthew said this, he added, "And also her god-brother." Lewis's pupils abruptly contracted. After a while, he stood up and extended his hand to Matthew with a smirk on his face. "Hello, god-brother." Matthew frowned. "I'm her god-brother." "And mine as well," Lewis said in a light tone, but his presence was overwhelming. "We're husband and wife, after all." "Husband and wife." Matthew stiffened suddenly. "She didn't tell you?" "Then I apologize to you on her behalf," Lewis said in a deep voice. Matthew was shocked. Kira felt that she had slept for a very long time. In her dream, she became younger, returning to the way she was when she was 3 years old. She was looking out a basement window, watching Isla running around outside in a beautiful dress, while Mrs. Olson gently wiped off Isla's sweat. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Poppy walked in. Kira shivered. Poppy's vicious eyes landed on her. Following Kira's gaze, she saw the scene outside and walked over, grabbed Kira's hair, and brutally pushed her head into a basin of water next to her. Kira heard Poppy's voice in and out of the water as if it was coming from a far-off distance. "What are you looking at? My daughter should live like a princess, and you're only fit for a sewer. You belong in the drainage." Kira shook her head, struggling. She didn't want to rot there forever. She didn't want to live in a filthy ditch either. So, with the little time she had, she studied hard, striving to work her way up. She was determined to change her own fate. At the age of 4, she had never been to kindergarten. She secretly observed Isla learning a foreign language. When Isla stumbled over a word, Kira was quick to respond. She thought she would receive praise from her mother. However, she never ever expected that what was about to occur was almost a complete disaster. Poppy praised her and unexpectedly gave her a piece of cake. The sweet and rich cream in her mouth gave her a sense of satisfaction. She was reluctant to swallow it. She thought her life was going to change. Poppy held her hand with a smile and took her out, only to hand her over to a human trafficker. She didn't cry or make a fuss. After all, the human traffickers at least gave her tasty candy, showed her kindness, and smiled at her, until they locked her in a basement with a bunch of other children. There, she met an older boy. They spent a month together, having a good time. In the beginning, the boy didn't talk much. Later, he asked her, "Don't you want to escape?" She said happily, "I don't." Although there was no freedom, she got enough to eat, had warm clothes, and didn't have to see her mother. She felt that was the happiest time in her life. The boy was puzzled and asked why. She said, "Because no one hits me here." The boy pondered her words before asking, "What's your name?" She shook her head. It was a laughing matter. She, at the age of 4, still didn't have a name and didn't have a household registration number. All the other children would cry and make a fuss, while she smiled every day. The human trafficker was the least guarded against her. So in the end, the boy handed her a bag of sleeping drugs to put in the trafficker's food. She did it. As the children were running haphazardly away, she just stood there. The boy asked her, "Why don't you leave?" She shook her head. "I don't know where to go." "Then, come home with me." The boy extended a hand toward her, and she took his hand. She didn't go home with him in the end, because they were so young. They were rescued by the police as soon as they descended the mountain. Her identity was confirmed, and she was sent back to the Olsen family. Before parting, she held onto the boy's leg and asked him in confusion, "Didn't you say you would take me home?" A police officer beside them chuckled. "Little girl, you aren't his kin. You can't go to his home." She had tears in her eyes. "But I don't want to go home. I want to be with him forever." The boy stroked her head and asked her, "Is it because you'll be beaten when you go home?" The police officer didn't take note of this. After all, children of their age often made a big fuss at home, and getting spanked was just a part of life. However, the boy took her seriously and said, "Wait for me. When we grow up, I'll come and marry you and take you to my home. Kira woke up abruptly. The scenes from her dream passed by like a fast-forwarded slideshow, leaving her momentarily confused about what was real and what was a dream. She didn't know about others, but she remembered clearly everything that happened when she was 4. She remembered that the boy gave her a nickname, 11, because she was the 11th child who was trafficked there. She remembered the taste of chocolate. She remembered the sunlight pouring into the dark basement and the dust dancing in the light. That was the happiest time when she was a kid. And this year, she turned 22, yet that boy still hasn't come to marry her. A bitter smile emerged on Kira's face. It wasn't that she was really fond of him. A 4-year-old child knew nothing about love, but his existence was the pillar that supported her through countless episodes of abuse and assault. For other children, their light was Ultraman. Her Ultraman was that boy. Unfortunately, the boy was only a kid. He must have long forgotten about her. Kira blinked and finally realized the strange atmosphere in the room. She turned her head and saw Lewis sitting next to her, asking, "Do you want some water?" Before Kira could react, Matthew's voice came from the other side. "Irrelevant people should leave now. I have to examine the patient." He picked up the stethoscope and came to the bedside, looking at Lewis. Lewis's face was gloomy. "I'm not an irrelevant person," Matthew continued. "Apart from the patient and the doctor, everyone else is irrelevant. Moreover, I have to examine the patient, which requires removing her clothes. It's not appropriate for you to be here." Lewis frowned. "It's appropriate for you to do it?" Matthew walked to Kira and lifted her blouse. "I'm a doctor. In my eyes, there is no distinction of gender." Lewis wanted to say something more, but when he saw the segment of her slender waist beneath her blouse, he blushed and immediately left the room. After leaving the room, Tom, who was waiting outside, subconsciously peeked inside. Lewis immediately blocked the doorway, shut the door, and scolded, "What are you looking at?" Tom was perplexed. He cleared his throat and said, "Boss, Miss Olson's name is a trending topic." Then he handed over his mobile phone. Lewis took it and saw the top trends, showing a journalist conducting an interview. The interviewee was Finley Hill's son, Connor Hill, who was wearing his school uniform, his face characteristically filled with discomfort and caution. The journalist inquired, "About your father's murder case, what do you have to say?" Connor seemed somewhat not used to face the camera, so he faltered. "My cousin, she didn't do it intentionally. It was an accident. Your father was a gambler. Didn't you hate him too?" Connor hesitated for a moment. "Sometimes yes, but there's nothing much to do about it. You can't change who you were born to, but I would like to say one thing for my cousin. Over the years, my father has been constantly going to her for money, and what happened was indeed manslaughter. I'm ready to issue a letter of understanding for my cousin, and hope that the police will deal with her leniently." This interview was initially unremarkable, but after these words, someone in the crowd shouted, "Did you know that your good cousin has been released on bail for a ridiculous reason? Anemia is said to have affected her health. Is she going to evade the crime?" With these words, the whole news suddenly heated up. Hashtags such as hashtag second generation rich eligible for bail hashtag rich brat gets away with murder hashtag, and hashtag money buys innocence for the rich hashtag immediately went onto the trending list. Everyone questioned Kira's eligibility for bail. At a glance, it was clear someone was behind this and paid for the trends. Lewis's face darkened. "Go find out who paid for it." "Yes." After that, Tom surveyed the surroundings. "I just discovered that some reporters have sneaked in." Lewis's face suddenly turned cold. "Find some people and secure the area." Kira was physically weak and shouldn't be disturbed now. Inside the ward, when Lewis left the room, Matthew put the stethoscope aside and sat next to Kira. Kira asked, "Matthew, why are you teasing him?" Matthew sneered. "You didn't even tell me you got married. Am I still your brother?" Kira said indifferently, "I didn't want to disturb you." Matthew seemed to perceive something and changed the topic. "What dream did you just have? You kept calling someone brother." Kira smiled. "I dreamt of when I was 3 or 4 years old. If it weren't for this, she wouldn't have felt anything, but bringing it up like this, she suddenly remembered the conversation in the dream. Apart from being abducted by traffickers at the age of 4, she also remembered being beaten at 3. In reality, most children at the age of 3 should have little memory. She vaguely remembered being beaten at that age, but perhaps the memory was too profound that in her dreams, she could clearly hear Poppy scolding. Listen, my daughter should be living a life of luxury, and you only deserve to live forever in this filthy gutter, in the stinking sewer. Kira smiled bitterly. She didn't expect to have such a dream after so long. Perhaps dreams revealed one's thoughts. She often dreamed of being Isla and Mrs. Olson being her mother. Matthew asked, "What about when you were 3 or 4? "Nothing." Kira didn't want to talk about the past. Her condition was peculiar. After iron was introduced into her system, all symptoms of anemia gradually disappeared, and she was fully revitalized. However, she still needed to store more iron, so she had to stay on in 4 for a couple more days. Taking in too much in one day could overwhelm her body. She picked up her phone and found a message on her Twitter. Her Twitter username was Ms. S, and she was fairly well known in the reporter circle. The person who sent her the message was named Josh, who had been following her for over 2 years. Josh wrote, "Ms. S, I won't back down this time. I want to be like you, fearless in the face of authority, and brave enough to expose the truth to the public. If you can see this message, I hope you can give me your blessing." Kira was perplexed. As she was puzzling over it, there was a knock at her door. Holly walked in with Connor Hill. Connor kept his head down, looking as timid as ever. When he entered the ward, he first glanced at Kira and then immediately lowered his head again. "Hello, Kira wasn't close to the Hill family members, and Finley Hill had only sought her out for money over the years. This cousin of hers was quiet and studious. He managed to earn a spot at the prestigious Oceanion University through sheer effort. She was still courteous toward him. "What's up?" Connor then spoke. I came to deliver a letter of forgiveness." Kira was taken aback. Connor then looked at Captain Lincoln, who had come in with him, his eyes teary. "I consulted with a lawyer. By submitting a letter of forgiveness, even if you're sentenced, it could be reduced to within 10 years. He bowed his head. "Kira, I was terrified when I called the police. I didn't mean to. My father wasn't a good person. He got what he deserved. It was my fault that you ended up behind bars." Captain Lincoln frowned. Even if he was a bad person, he should have been punished by the law, not dealt with privately by you. Connor's eyes were bloodshot, and he growled, "I did report him. When he was gambling, I called the police, but after you arrested him, he was only detained for a month and then released. He continued to gamble. We lost our house, my mom ran off with someone else, and I had no place to live. I had no choice but to work my hardest. He even took my scholarship money. Even his own son was treated like this, let alone his niece. You don't understand our suffering, so don't stand on your high moral ground and judge us." He tried to wipe away the tears. "I know I shouldn't say this, but when I saw he was dead, I was confused, but now I only feel relieved." After saying this, he covered his face and squatted down slowly. "I'm such a jerk. My dad's dead, and I can finally breathe. Even though I have to repay his debt of $5 million, I see hope. You wouldn't understand. When he was alive, he was greedy like a bottomless pit." His sobs choked his words. Captain Lincoln stiffened but remained silent. The only sound in the room was Connor's stifling sobs. Kira said nothing. Others might think she had lived a comfortable life, but the truth was her life hadn't been any better than Connor's. At least Finley Hill had never starved Connor. After a while, Connor finally stopped crying, wiped his tears, and stood up. "I'm sorry. I lost my composure." "It's okay." Captain Lincoln patted his shoulder. "We understand." Kira then slowly said, "Thank you for your letter of forgiveness, but I don't need it. As I said, I'm not the killer." Connor was stunned as if he didn't understand. "Kira, I asked about this. If you plead guilty and show remorse, you'll at most be sentenced to 3 years. But if you insist on being innocent, you might be sentenced to over 10 years. "I know, but I didn't kill him. If I didn't kill them, I can't admit to anything," said Kira flatly. Connor didn't say anything. After a moment, he turned toward Captain Lincoln to ask a stupid question. "As my father's son, can I choose not to pursue this matter?" Captain Lincoln said, "This is a criminal case. Even if you don't pursue it, We still will. Connor tightened his jaw and looked at Kira. Then I can't help you. Kira shook her head. That's all right. Again, Connor lowered his head. Kira, get some rest. I have to leave now. Okay. Connor took 2 steps away and suddenly turned to Captain Lincoln. Captain Lincoln, about the money that was found at the scene. Could you get it to me now? I borrowed it from my classmates. The money was scattered on the ground, and some of it was stained with blood, so it was used as evidence and kept at the police station. Captain Lincoln shook his head. The police department has its rules. It's evidence, and we can't give it to you for now. Only after we have confirmed that there are no clues can it be returned to you. Connor then hung his head. But that's next month's living expenses of my dorm mates. Promised them that I would return it as soon as possible. All of them had worked part-time before, and they knew that the students needed their every hard-earned penny. Suddenly losing $20,000 was bound to cause strain among these students. Kira narrowed her eyes. All of a sudden, she said, "Wait." Connor then turned back. Kira picked up her phone. "I'll have Samuel give you $20,000 for your emergency needs." Connor's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Kira. As soon as the money at the police station is returned, I'll give it back to you." Kira sent a message to Samuel. Not long after, Samuel walked in with $20,000 in cash and handed it to Connor. Connor's eyes stung. He took the money. "Kira, my father has borrowed a lot of money from you over the years. Don't worry. Once I start earning money, I'll pay you back. Don't worry about it. He is he, and you're you." Just as Kira finished saying that, there was a sudden click at the door. Everyone turned their heads to see a thin, unfamiliar man nervously clutching his mobile phone, having captured the earlier moment. When everyone noticed him, the man immediately charged in. "Connor Hill, I knew there must be a financial transaction when you granted forgiveness to the murderer of your father. You are not worthy to be a son." After he finished speaking, he turned his gaze to Kira. Noticing her healthy complexion without any signs of anemia, he scoffed. "What's all this about being on bail, pending trial due to a near-death condition? Is this what a near-death condition looks like?" He took out his phone and shot a video of Kira. "So, wealthy people have privileges, right? They can find a way to get bail, no matter what." He turned to Captain Lincoln. "Is this how you guys uphold the law impartially?" Captain Lincoln frowned and declared sternly, "Journalists are not allowed in here. Please leave." "I'm not leaving." The journalist was very agitated as he directed his camera at them. "I'm live streaming. All these procedures are being broadcast live, and I'll expose you." Captain Lincoln immediately made a move to stop the man. "You are invading other people's privacy. When cases are not clear enough, many people are getting away with it. As a citizen, I have the right to know the truth of any case." The young journalist was fearless. Unfortunately, Captain Lincoln had already taken his mobile phone, cutting off his live streaming. Captain Lincoln was furious. "What's your name? Which newspaper are you from? I'll hold you responsible." The young journalist lifted his chin and sneered. "Don't try to scare me. My idol is Ms. S., who bravely reported on a certain company's pollution discharge despite the strong power at the time. I'm afraid of nothing, but only seeking the truth." Hearing these words, Kira was perplexed. Suddenly recalling the message on her Twitter from earlier, she was greatly amazed. "Are you Josh?" The young journalist was surprised. "How do you know that?" Kira opened her phone, found Twitter, clicked into Josh's homepage, and sure enough, she saw his photo. But Josh misunderstood her. "I didn't expect you to know who I am. But even if you do know my work address and company, and try to use power to pressure the company to fire me, I won't compromise." He took a step forward and continued. "Ms. S. once said, if every journalist is looking out for their own safety, then many truths in this world will be covered up. Even if I can't be a journalist anymore, there are millions of journalists who will stand out. Don't think that you can hide what you've done forever." Kira didn't know what to say. Listening to his cliched speech, she chuckled. "You just graduated from college, didn't you?" Josh nodded. "Yes, what about it?" "No wonder you're so naive." Josh was dumbfounded. He couldn't help but look at Kira. It was as if she didn't realize he was talking about her. Captain Lincoln grabbed his arm. "Enough. This is a hospital. Please leave." He threw Josh's phone back to him, then grabbed his arm and took him straight out the door. It wasn't until then that Kira turned to look at Holly. But when she did, Holly immediately avoided her gaze. Her pretty face was tense, and she seemed rather uncomfortable. Only then did she say, "Well, I have things to do. I'll step out for a moment." She quickly left the room. Kira chuckled, still the same old stick in the mud. Holly was so straightforward in character and was remorseful after doing something wrong. But she didn't blame Holly. Iron deficiency anemia was indeed a rare condition. When she first mentioned it, hardly anyone would believe her. She looked perfectly fine when she said she had anemia, but Holly still ran a routine blood test for her, which was more than what the average person would do. As Kira was pondering, Samuel suddenly asked, "Boss, do you know who the murderer is?" Kira raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Samuel chuckled. "Hey, Josh is live streaming again." Kira was startled and looked at Samuel's phone. Josh was live streaming on Twitter just now, and he was still on there. He was standing outside the hospital, talking to the camera. "My live stream was interrupted earlier. I'm back to say hi to everyone. I'm okay. They haven't lost all conscience. They didn't kill me because I saw their transaction." People left comments below the video. "The world hasn't collapsed because of the perseverance of people like you. I knew it. No matter how terrible one's father is, he's still family. How could a son provide a letter of forgiveness to a murderer? No surprise there was a financial transaction. The evil of capital. Can money disregard human life? Claiming anemia as grounds for bail. It's utterly shameless. Such people must be brought to justice. I don't understand. The evidence is clear. Why aren't they arresting anyone? Isn't this kind of case straightforward to solve?" Just as Josh was making light of himself, and everyone was criticizing Kira, a voice rang out. "Hello." Josh turned his head and saw Holly in her police uniform, walking toward him authoritatively. "I can accept your live interview." Josh was delighted. "Officer Sims, they told me earlier that you are a forensic doctor. Can you assure the fairness in front of the camera?" "I can." Holly looked at the camera. Josh said, "Then may I ask, is the murder suspect Miss Olson really out on bail due to anemia? Isn't this excuse laughable?" Holly adjusted her uniform and also straightened her hat. Then she stood straight, looking at the camera, and said, "I can verify that Miss Olson is indeed suffering from severe anemia, which is threatening her life. I signed her bail application, and I assure you she's definitely not trying to escape punishment." Josh didn't expect her to say that and sneered. "Officer Sims, how can you guarantee it for her?" Holly paused. She clenched her jaw, her upright gaze fixed on the screen, and she said word by word, "Because of this uniform." She spoke forcefully. "I can tell everyone here openly that if Miss Olson's bail is to escape, I'll take off this uniform for good." Josh was stunned by her determination. Holly looked at Josh. "Sometimes, the truth isn't what you see. The inherent impressions of human beings can be harmful. Who says anemia isn't life-threatening? Don't let short-sightedness and narrow-mindedness affect your judgment, thus making irreversible mistakes." She seemed to be talking to Josh and to herself at the same time. Having said that, Holly turned and left. Kira looked at her phone and was deeply moved. Holly valued her police uniform the most. But when they were at the police station, Captain Lincoln told Holly that Kira would apply for bail. Holly made a guarantee with her uniform. Even though Kira indeed applied for bail now, Holly was still willing to stand up and vouch for her. "Your friend, although a bit stubborn, is good to you." Lewis walked in at some point. His tall figure made the room seem rather small. He sat down beside her. Kira nodded. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Yes, although she's a bit silly." She looked at Lewis. In her mind, she couldn't help but think of when she was at the police station. After Holly misunderstood her and thought she had fought Poppy, she was going to send Kira to solitary confinement. Kira was filled with despair. In the dark detention center, Lewis arrived like a deity, holding Captain Lincoln hostage. Then, he even picked her up and took her to the hospital. Being held by him then, she could smell his fresh scent. His tall and burly figure gave her a sense of security like never before. Maybe it was because she was ill then, she felt extremely weak. Now that she thought about it, She felt. He was so bold. What kind of place was that? Who did he take hostage? What if he was shot dead on the spot by the armed police trying to rescue Captain Lincoln? He was even more silly than Holly. Kira was lost in thought and suddenly said, "Thank you." Her politeness suddenly made Lewis feel a bit uncomfortable. Without thinking, he wanted to say, "If anything happens to you, Granny will be heartbroken." But he swallowed the words in the end. He rubbed his nose, his face softening a little. "You're welcome." His reaction reminded Kira of something. In her memories, the boy she met when she was 4 would also rub his nose when embarrassed. Also, that boy was afraid of cats. Kira suddenly asked, "Were you kidnapped when you were little?" Lewis paused, his eyes instantly darkening. Why would you ask that? The moment Kira asked the question, she felt she had been too abrupt. Nobody wanted to talk about their childhood, especially not things like that. Moreover, that boy wasn't from Ocean Island back then, otherwise he would have been brought back by the police. What were the chances of such coincidences in the world? Kira cracked a smile and was just about to brush it off when the door to her room opened again. Holly walked in, and Kira and Lewis quickly dropped the subject. Holly still looked a bit uncomfortable, but she approached Kira's bed, still looking rather nonchalant. She had a cup of honey water in hand, which she handed to Kira, then averted her gaze and awkwardly said, "I misunderstand you. I apologize. I hope you won't file a complaint against Captain Lincoln and the others. Everything was due to my poor judgment." Kira sighed, looked at Lewis, and, after seeing him nod, she said, "Don't worry, Mr. Horton, and I won't press any charges." Holly seemed taken aback. Why? After being wronged like that, no ordinary person would let them off the hook. The police station would definitely punish her and Captain Lincoln, and might even compensate them for their emotional distress. Kira just smiled faintly, but didn't answer. If it were someone else, she wouldn't have put up with it. But Holly, she fooled Holly back in junior high school. Holly seemed to understand something and held her lips tightly. "Don't worry, I'll help you catch the murderer and clear your name as soon as possible." After saying this, however, she noticed that Kira and Lewis's expressions remained unchanged. There was no sign of surprise on their faces, which surprised her. "You know who the murderer is?" Kira raised her eyebrows and looked at Lewis. She had her suspicions and had just confirmed them. Did Lewis also know? She saw him nod. "I've already sent someone to follow Connor Hill." Holly had a sudden realization. "So, Connor Hill is the murderer?" Kira didn't respond to this, but asked Lewis instead, "How did you find out?" Lewis began in a detached manner. His deep voice, especially when analyzing a case, had a unique charm to it. There were only 4 people on the scene that day. The victim was killed right then and there. Apart from you, me, and Tom, Connor was the only one left. I've always been wondering that if you killed Finley Hill, where did the voice answering the door come from? There's only one possibility, a recording. Holly didn't agree, but no recording device was found on the scene, and there were no relevant recordings in Finley Hill's phone. His phone fell out of his pocket, and there was no trace of anyone touching it. Kira said coolly, it wasn't his phone that recorded the sound, it was Connor's. When he saw the victim lying on the ground, he deliberately scattered the things in his hand everywhere. Afterward, while making the emergency call, he picked up the phone from the floor. She didn't notice anything off at that moment. After all, it was common for a phone to drop to the ground after money had been spilled all over. It was only after using the process of elimination to determine that it was Connor that these details slowly came together. The only person who could convince Finley to record the sound in advance was someone he trusted. With Finley's character, the only person he could trust was Connor, his son. Connor somehow tricked him into recording those words, then left his own phone at the scene of the crime, creating the false impression that Finley was still alive. In this way, Lewis and Tom became indirect witnesses to Kira's alleged murder. The way Finley fell toward Kira when she entered the room wasn't because he was lunging at her. He was losing his balance and toppled over. Paired with that recording, anyone's natural reaction would be to push the other person away. If it were not for Kira's keen hearing and the cautious character of Lewis and Tom, all of them would have thought that Kira had accidentally killed Finley. The situation was nearly unsolvable. Holly was stunned by their explanation and then said solemnly, "Then I'll arrange for his arrest immediately. If he recorded it on his phone, even if he deleted it, we can still recover it. That would be direct evidence." But Kira shook her head. Not yet. This was unusual for Holly, and she was a little anxious. Why not? I need to clear your name as soon as possible. Don't you know that people are slandering you online right now? Even though she clarified it just now, netizens still wouldn't believe her. Lewis said calmly, "I think Miss Olson probably has a plan in mind." Holly looked at Kira uncertainly. Kira just nodded and said, "Holly, I need you to do me a favor. Delay it for a few more days. Finley said before he died that he would tell me a secret about Isla Olson. Coincidentally, the moment I went to meet him, Connor killed him. I don't believe for a second that this incident had nothing to do with Isla." Holly was stunned. "So, you're using Connor to draw Isla Olson out?" She said with a bitter smile. "Kira, I remember now. The main reason I misunderstood you back then was because Isla asked me to plead for you. Looking back, she must have been using me. But even now, I still can't accuse her. She's such a cunning person, and even if she really did instruct Connor, she wouldn't have left any clues behind. The police department probably won't be able to find evidence to arrest her." Kira shook her head. Connor's intent to kill most likely existed long before. Isla was at best just a temptress in the whole matter. I didn't plan to put her in jail through this. Holly didn't understand. "Then what is your plan?" Kira wanted to say something, but her throat itched a little, and she coughed. Lewis quickly said, "Have some water first. I'll explain it for you." Kira paused and obediently took a sip of the honey water. Lewis continued, "I guess that what Miss Olson really wanted to know was Isla's secret." Kira's eyes lit up, and she nodded in agreement. Lewis went on to add, "Finley knew an important secret about Isla. Since he trusted his son so much, he would have definitely told Connor the secret. From what I've observed, Connor is a thoughtful and meticulous person. He wouldn't easily reveal Isla's secret. I think Miss Olson wants to pit Connor against Isla and let him realize what Isla is really like, so that when he's arrested later, he won't help Isla keep the secret." Kira felt a warmth spread through her body after finishing the cup of honey water. What Lewis had explained was exactly her plan. Did Isla think killing Finley could secure her secret forever? But Connor was still around. Upon hearing this explanation, Holly still seemed anxious. "But netizens are slandering Connor, and you too. It's okay." Kira placed the cup on the bedside table, her voice full of powerful confidence. "Rumors are like a tickle to me, but for him, they'll be a mighty calamity that can throw him into confusion." Her confidence left Holly at a loss for words. Holly seemed to remember something and said, "Kira, let me tell you now. The message Finley left for you on his phone is..." Kira hurriedly stopped her. "Don't say anything. Don't go against your professional ethics." Holly paused. Then she coughed to cover up her embarrassment. "Actually, it was okay to tell you about the recording. It had nothing to do with the case. I was just..." She fell silent before finally admitting it. "I just wanted to make things difficult for you." Kira didn't know what to say. She rubbed her brow in resignation. "Well, then tell me." Holly looked embarrassed. Her face was still serious as she spoke. The last words were, "Dear niece, Connor knows the secret too. Please make sure his tuition fee is covered." The room was quiet for a while. Kira frowned. Even though she had guessed that Finley wouldn't leave a message about any secrets and that Connor surely knew something, she still found the message strange. She had gone to Finley intending to pay $5 million to buy the secret. If she learned the secret from Finley, why would she still have to cover Connor's tuition? Or was it that Finley had never planned to sell her the secret? Kira shook her head, grateful for her arrangement. She didn't accuse Connor of being the murderer right after the crime. Otherwise, she might never be able to pry the truth out of him. Now, she would for Connor to crack under the criticism. However, Holly was a bit worried. "Kira, don't overdo it. If he throws away his phone, you'll lose the most crucial piece of evidence, and you'll never turn this case around." At this, Kira frowned. After the incident, she was taken to the police station right away and didn't get a chance to tell Samuel what needed to be done. She wondered if Connor had changed his phone. No, he won't. Lewis suddenly interjected. He said calmly, after the incident, Connor threw away his original phone and switched to an identical one. A spark flickered in Kira's eyes, and she smiled. Impressive, Mr. Horton. Since taking over the company, Lewis had heard countless compliments, but the straightforward praise from Kira made his cheeks slightly flushed. He smiled slightly. You flatter me, Miss Olson. Holly looked from one to the other and suddenly said, You two are married, yet you call each other Mr. Horton and Miss Olson. I first thought you weren't acquainted, but you actually seem to understand each other so well. Is this your form of displaying affection? The room fell quiet all of a sudden. Kira looked away from Lewis and seemed to be blushing. She felt fine when others addressed her as Miss Olson, but Lewis's deep voice was like a feather lightly teasing her heart, bringing a tingling sensation. She didn't notice Lewis's ears turning red. Meanwhile, Connor had no idea what was coming for him. Shortly after leaving the hospital, he returned to his college campus. He happily repaid his roommates the $20,000 cash he borrowed. Some took $6,000 and snidely commented, I knew you seemed way too confident about being able to pay back the loan. So, someone was ready to pick up the tab for you. Connor didn't understand what they meant, but another rich second-generation student threw the money on the ground. Hell no, I don't want your filthy money. You earned it by selling out your own father. Do you have no shame spending it? Connor was stunned. What do you mean? You want to know? The guy handed Connor his phone. Check this out. Connor took over the phone and saw the footage of Samuel giving him money, and the video was now spreading on the internet. Everyone was slamming him for being an ungrateful son who signed a letter of understanding for money. Connor waved his hands. No, that's not true. I didn't take her money. This $20,000 is what I borrowed from you guys. It was only an emergency fund she gave me because the police had seized. His roommates didn't believe him. If you say so, we'll take your word for it. Connor thought they believed his explanation and let out a sigh of relief. One of them picked up the cash left on the floor by the rich kid. Don't throw it away. You can buy us dinner with it. The rich kid sneered. Fine, let's go. As Connor followed them to the door, intending to join them, someone stopped him. Where are you going? Connor was taken aback. Aren't we going to have dinner? Oh no, we would rather not have you. If you come with us, we'll probably get interrupted by reporters. You'd better stay in the dorm. His roommates went out, leaving Connor alone in the room. He had a gloomy look in his eyes. He moistened his lips, trying not to give it much thought. After all, having a father like that, he was used to the strange looks from others. He pulled out his phone and called Isla. As soon as the call was connected, Isla's gentle voice came across. What's wrong? Connor remained silent. Isla sighed. I saw the comments online. Actually, it's a good thing. It can force Kira to confess sooner, and you'll be safe. Connor responded with a non-committal, Isla comforted him. Connor, you have to live with it. If you can't bear it, everything will be revealed. You can't go to jail. If you do, what will become of me? Connor's expression softened. Having a father like that was indeed painful. His neighbors and classmates all looked down on him. Only Isla was different. She was like a beam of light that shone into his world when they were in junior high school. She would bring him breakfast and tutor him when he didn't do well in his studies. She told him not to mind the looks other people threw his way. He only got into Oceanion University because of Isla. Her gentle demeanor and the image of the girl next door made him admire her ever since he was a teenager. So when she appeared in front of him and said that his father had threatened her and asked for $5 million, he became unusually enraged. His father could bully anyone in the world, except her. That was why Connor decided to kill Finley and frame Kira. Connor had always desired Isla, but the situation was different now. He had killed for her, so Connor lowered his eyes and asked, When can we be together? Isla paused before replying softly, Soon. The Horton family is going to break off the engagement with me. Once that happens, my parents should be able to accept you. Really? Connor's eyes lit up. Can you come see me now? I miss you. Isla said, Connor, I'm busy. What could be more important than me? Connor looked around his empty room, his eyes becoming darker. Isla, just before father died, He told me your secret. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Kira and Lewis were listening to their conversation. Upon hearing this, Kira raised an eyebrow. Finley had indeed told Connor the truth. The next moment, she heard Isla say in disbelief, "Connor, stop talking nonsense. What kind of secret can be between your father and me?" Connor scoffed. "Of course, it's about you and Kira." Isla still stubbornly retorted, "What kind of secret could there possibly be between me and Kira?" Exactly. Kira also wanted to know what the secret had to do with her. A secret so significant it could let Isla be threatened by Finley for so many years. "Are you sure you want me to say it out loud?" The faint voice of Connor added a sense of pressure to Isla's reluctance. Isla immediately changed her tone. "I'm on my way to the hospital to visit Kira with my mother. I'll ask her to put some pressure on Kira so she'll confess her guilt as soon as possible. After I'm done with all this, I'll come to see you, okay?" Connor finally smiled. "All right, I'll wait for you tonight." The call ended. However, Kira frowned and shuddered. She didn't expect Isla and Connor to have such a relationship. Wasn't Isla 2 years older than Connor? She felt a chill run down her spine. Lewis, standing by the window, said, "Mrs. Olson is here." In the phone call, Isla had already mentioned that she would be coming to visit Kira with Mrs. Olson. Thus, Kira wasn't surprised. She quickly freshened up and lightly patted her cheeks, adding some color to her face. Seeing her actions, Lewis paused slightly. "Are you afraid that Mrs. Olson will worry?" "Yes." Kira rushed into the bathroom, changed herself out of the hospital gown, and came out looking radiant again. After all these preparations, there was a sound at the door. Mrs. Olson walked in with Isla and Taylor Olson. Upon entering, Mrs. Olson's eyes were immediately on Kira. Seeing her looking as usual, she breathed a sigh of relief and quickly walked over to her. "Kira, are you all right? Why didn't you tell me when such a big thing happened? If it wasn't for the news, when were you planning to inform me?" Kira felt a warmth in her chest. Just as she was about to answer, Taylor sneered. "By looking at her healthy appearance, where does she look sick? As it says on the internet, she just wants to apply for bail." Kira's smile froze on her face, and she slowly lowered her head. But Mrs. Olson held her hand tightly. "Kira is not that kind of kid. Don't talk nonsense." Then she looked worriedly at Kira. "I didn't know you had anemia when you were living with the Olson family before. Have you been too tired since you moved out? Did you not eat enough? We gave her living expenses every month. How could she have malnutrition?" Taylor scoffed. Kira frowned and immediately turned to him. "You gave me living expenses every month? How come I've never received it?" Hearing those words, Taylor was stunned. Mrs. Olson frowned even more. "What? You didn't receive it? How have you been managing all these years?" Kira clenched her jaw. She really didn't know about the living expenses, and she hadn't received a single penny over these years. However, Taylor didn't believe her. "Surely, do you hear her talking nonsense here? She claims she didn't receive any money. How did she pay for her bills over the years then? She even went to college." Kira scoffed immediately. "Mr. Olson, I haven't taken a penny from the Olson family since I left the Olson residence. Do you need me to show you my bank statement?" Taylor was taken aback. Mrs. Olson turned to Isla. "Isla, didn't I ask you to send money to Kira every month? Didn't you send it?" Isla's eyes flickered, clearly flustered, but her soon head dropped. "Mom, I gave the money to Aunt Hill. Could she have kept it from Kira? How could she do this?" When Poppy was mentioned, Taylor's face was full of disgust. "She's such a selfish person. If you gave the money to her, it's no wonder she kept it to herself." Taylor looked at Kira again. "Did you hear that? It's not that we didn't give you money, but your mother embezzled it. That has nothing to do with the Olson family." His manner clearly informed Kira that he, as her father, had provided enough money. Kira chuckled, but before she could retort, Mrs. Olson intervened. "Taylor, no matter what, Kira didn't receive the money. Therefore, she had to work hard, which ruined her health. This is where you, as a father, failed in your responsibilities. Surely, you are too kind-hearted. You're still worrying about her health. She's not sick at all. She's just pretending." Taylor didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, he frowned at Kira. "Before we came, We asked the lawyer. Your despicable uncle was the one who made a mistake first. You accidentally hurt him, so you won't be guilty of a major crime. Confess now, so the news can be suppressed. Otherwise, if this continues and your identity is revealed, the Olsen family will also suffer because of you. Isla also piped up. Kira, Dad is right. If your relationship with the Olsen family is discovered, our family stocks will plummet severely, and we need to control the remarks on the internet. Dad is thinking about what's best for you. If you confess, you could get a lighter sentence. If you refuse to confess, you'll face more years in prison. Kira didn't care about the two of them. She just looked at Mrs. Olsen. Do you agree with them? Mrs. Olsen patted her hand. Kira, did you really accidentally kill that person? No. Do you have any evidence? Kira glanced at Isla and noticed her nervousness, whereupon she slowly said, No. Isla breathed a sigh of relief. But Mrs. Olsen looked troubled. But I just inquired from the police station, and the current evidence is very unfavorable to you. If you can't find strong evidence to discharge yourself, you'll likely lose this case. She bowed her head. Before we came, I consulted the lawyer, and his advice was for you to confess as soon as possible. Kira's heart sank a little when she heard this. But to her surprise, Mrs. Olsen held her hand the next moment. But you shouldn't confess to what you didn't do. Kira, stick to what you think is right and keep going. Kira's eyes lit up, and she nodded vigorously. But Taylor reproached. Surely, don't let her fool you. They were in an abandoned hospital at the time. If you didn't murder him, was a ghost that did? Now, the whole internet is on a crusade against her. You're still supporting her now. You're spoiling the child too much. Isla also couldn't help saying, Mom, we agreed to come here to persuade Kira to plead guilty. Otherwise, the reputation of the Olsen family will be affected and Jake will break off our engagement. Are you going to be unfair to me again? All because of an illegitimate daughter. Mrs. Olsen was taken aback by these comments. She was speechless for a moment. Tears started to flow from Isla's eyes. Mom, in the end, is she your biological daughter, or am I your biological daughter? After saying this, she ran out crying. Mrs. Olsen looked a bit panicked. She looked at Kira, then outside the door, obviously hesitating. But eventually, she stood up and went after Isla with Taylor. The room quickly returned to its quiet state. Kira stared at the door, laughing at herself. Lewis, who had stayed in the corner of the room the whole time, watched Mrs. Olsen as she left. Did I ever mention to you that you and Mrs. Olsen seem more like real mother and daughter? Kira was slightly dazed upon hearing this. Then, she lowered her head. Actually, many people have said that. Lewis didn't say anything and quietly listened to her explanation. Kira smiled. When we were little, Isla hated me so much simply because when I stood next to Mrs. Olsen, people always mistook me as Mrs. Olsen's daughter. Children didn't know how to hide their true feelings. Isla was very obviously targeting Kira back then. She would push Kira, hit her, and have a bunch of other kids curse her. Kira had been severely brainwashed by Poppy at the time, always thinking that she owed Isla and forever keeping her head low in front of Isla, not knowing how to resist. Kira's eyes gradually became brooding. In fact, I had thought that maybe the reason why Poppy was so bad to me was because I wasn't her biological child at all. Unfortunately, I did a DNA test with her, and indeed, I'm her daughter. She had been kidnapped and sold for several months at the time. Upon returning, the police station requested that she and Poppy undergo a DNA test to ascertain the child's parentage. She wished at the time that she wasn't Poppy's daughter. Unfortunately, there was no such if. That's indeed quite a pity. Lewis's voice was low and soft. However, upon careful consideration, you and Mrs. Olsen don't really look alike. It's just that your temperaments are very similar. People who live together tend to develop similar habits over time. When she was little, Kira's favorite thing to do was to observe Mrs. Olsen and learn how to interact with people from her. It was also thanks to Mrs. Olsen that she was able to awaken and stop being manipulated by Poppy. She smiled. I know we don't look alike. If any of my facial features looked like Mrs. Olsen's, I would have thought of Mrs. Olsen as my mother. This self-deprecating remark made Lewis chuckle slightly. He lowered his gaze and said lightly, "Maybe it's an intergenerational inheritance?" Kira immediately looked at him. "What was that?" "Nothing." Frankie texted back. "Okay." Mrs. Allen saw the group message and looked at Mr. Allen with a mixed feeling of laughter and tears. "You're unbelievable. Mrs. Olson has raised her daughter for so many years. How could she mistake her for someone else? You must have remembered wrong. It's been so many years." Mr. Allen chuckled. "I indeed can't recall Lady South's appearance that well. After all, I haven't seen her for more than 20 years. As for whether Miss Olson looks like her or not, we'll know after seeing the photo, won't we?" Mrs. Allen wanted to say something more, but a photo was sent over. Mr. Allen opened it right away, then seemed a bit disappointed. "This photo is way too old. It's not only distorted, but also blurred. I can't tell anything." Mrs. Allen also had a careful look. "It's indeed distorted. I think you're overthinking it." Mr. Allen sighed. At this moment, Frankie sent a message in the chat group. "There are photo restoration services available now. Dad, do you want me to take it there to have it restored?" Mr. Allen's eyes sparkled. "Sure." Mrs. Allen saw his persistence and was somewhat helpless. "Sure, but remember, photo restoration takes some time. Wait until the restored photo comes out. Then you can observe it carefully." The couple shared a smile. At night, Rebecca reluctantly said goodbye to Kira. "Are you sure you don't need me to have dinner with you? It's rather lonely eating alone." Kira gave a slight smile. "That's all right." Someone said to her when he was leaving that he would come back to keep her company. After the Allen family left, this VIP ward finally became quiet again. Kira checked the time and saw it was already 6 in the evening. Footsteps were heard outside the door, and she looked up immediately. An expectation she didn't even notice was on her face. Creak! The door opened. Tom walked in, and Kira looked past him, trying to find that tall figure, but there was no one else. Kira was slightly stunned. Tom cleared his throat, then said, "Miss Olson, Mr. Horton is busy tonight and can't come, so he asked me to bring dinner for you." Kira's eyes dimmed a little, and she nodded. "Okay, thank you." The next day, Kira prepared to be discharged from the hospital. She didn't bring much when she was hospitalized, so discharge was a simple affair. Looking out the window from the ward, she indeed saw a few stubborn journalists carrying their cameras, squatting outside. Kira raised her eyebrows. She didn't make a big deal, nor wait for Lewis to come. She just informed the bodyguard sent by the Horton family and left quietly through the back door. She took a taxi and returned to the rundown neighborhood where she had rented a place. After getting out of the car with a mask on, she arrived at her front door. Just as she was about to take out her key, someone suddenly sprung from the stairwell. "Miss Olson, are you completely cured? Why didn't you turn yourself into the police station then?" Kira took a closer look and found it was Josh again. He was indeed persistent and clever. Knowing that it was hard to see her in the guarded hospital, he ran to her flat instead. Kira was displeased. "How do you know my address?" Josh pointed the camera at her and started talking. "Miss Olson, the internet nowadays is very advanced. Some good-hearted people have already exposed your address online, so don't think you can evade the law." Kira let out a cold laugh. "The so-called good-hearted people must be Isla." Josh took another step forward. "Looking at your complexion, you seem to be fine. Please answer my question." Kira said indifferently, "The case hasn't been solved yet, so please trust the police's judgment. I don't have any more comments for the rest." After she finished, she opened the door. Josh immediately tried to stop her from entering. Kira warned him, "Josh, trespassing is illegal. Even news gathering by journalists must follow legal procedures. Are you sure you want to block the doorway and stop me from going in?" Josh was stunned. Kira turned elegantly and stepped into the door. Yet the next second, she halted. The room was a total mess, and all her belongings were stuffed into big boxes. The pot-bellied, middle-aged landlord glared at her. "You came just in time. Take your stuff and leave. I'm not renting out this house anymore." Kira was startled. "What? What?" The chubby landlord said impatiently. "My home address has been exposed online. If I continue to rent this house to you, a murderer, how could I sell this house in the future? I'm afraid it'll become a haunted house. You're moving out now. His face was shaking as he spoke, looking quite fierce and intimidating. Kira's chin tightened, and she said coldly, "The police haven't convicted me. How have I become a murderer?" The chubby landlord sneered. "Everyone on the internet knows what happened. You just want to evade punishment." "I see. So netizens now have the final say on who is breaking the law and who isn't? Then what are the police and law for?" Kira's sharp words left the chubby landlord speechless. Although he was at fault, he became furious. He picked up Kira's stuff from the floor and threw out of the door. "This is my house. I can decide not to rent it. Since you're so insensitive and refuse to leave, don't blame me for being rude." Bang! The cardboard box fell on the ground outside, and everything was scattered onto the ground. The chubby landlord blocked the doorway with his sturdy body. "Take your stuff and get out. My house won't be rented to people like you." Kira's eyes flashed with a fierce light. She intended to make a move on the landlord, but suddenly she caught sight of a photo of her and Mrs. Olson among the things scattered on the ground. It was a photo taken on her 13th birthday when she and Mrs. Olson were together. This photo had been with her for almost 10 years. Now, the frame was broken, and the shards of glass had punctured the photo. Kira immediately turned around, intended to pick it up, but then footsteps echoed in the corridor as 7 or 8 journalists suddenly appeared. They crowded the small stairwell, forcing Kira into a corner. "Miss Olson, why did you apply for bail? There's ample evidence. It's quite obvious that it was manslaughter. Why don't you admit your crime? Are you planning to flee abroad? The deceased was your uncle. He died right in front of you. Don't you feel any guilt at all? You gave the son of the deceased money. What's your motive? Guilt and compensation? Or buying forgiveness with money?" Kira ignored their questions and tried to pick up the photo, but the journalists rushed forward like a swarm of bees, and one of them stomped heavily on the photo. A moment of intense fierceness flashed in Kira's eyes. She slowly raised her head, her eyes ruthless, and coldly spat out, "Out of my way." The reporter glanced down at what he had stepped on, but made no effort to move. "Miss Olson, the picture under my foot features you and your mother, correct? You have family, so you understand the pain of losing a loved one. Did you truly kill the victim by mistake? Your uncle just asked you for some money. Couldn't you simply have refused instead of resorting to murder?" Josh, who had arrived first on the scene, was puzzled when he heard this. He frowned and said, "Let Miss Olson pick up her family photo first. As a journalist, you shouldn't be threatening someone like this. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures." The reporter retorted harshly, glaring at Josh. "A reporter shouldn't act saintly like you. She's obviously a murderer. For people like her, special measures should be taken. And besides, how am I threatening? I'm just standing here asking Miss Olson some questions." He looked back at Kira. "Miss Olson, unless you answer my questions, I won't move." Before he could finish, someone had already grabbed his arm. A sudden force made him stumble back uncontrollably. Kira forcefully moved the reporter away and then bent down to pick up the photo. Upon seeing the black footprint on it, she gave off a ferocious aura. The reporter, having been pushed back, started shouting, "What was that? The killer is resorting to violence now." When he looked at Kira again, he was frightened by her demeanor. She may be slender and dressed in a comfortable, white outfit that gave an image of delicacy, but the fierceness in her eyes right now made her look like a ghastly figure that crawled out from a bloody hell. The reporter swallowed hard. "Look, that's the eyes of a killer. Terrifying as ever. It must have been her who planned and executed the murder." "Really?" A cool voice slowly responded. Kira wiped the photo and picked up a shard of glass that hadn't yet fallen from the frame. "Deliberately killing someone. It seems capital punishment awaits regardless of whether it's one or multiple murders, right?" With that said, all the reporters fell silent, stunned. They all stared at the sharp glass shard in her hand. Kira swept her gaze across all reporters present and eventually cast her eyes toward the heavy landlord. The burly, 200-pound man was trembling with fear. "WHWH, what are you going to do?" Kira pointed at the scattered luggage littering the floor. What do you think? The landlord immediately stuttered out, "So sorry, 111, clean it up for you." Terrified, he pushed his way through the reporters and bent over to tidy up the scattered items. He grabbed Kira's luggage from inside, packed everything up for her, and gingerly pushed it in front of her, as if trying to ward off evil spirits. "Me, Miss Olson, we've had some good years together. Let's part on good terms, all right?" Kira dropped her gaze. When she left the Olson family and had nowhere to go, this landlord had indeed rented her the place at a low price. Later, when the Olson family stopped providing living expenses, she failed to pay the rent on time twice, and the landlord didn't evict her. Considering that, Kira decided not to make a fuss with the landlord. She pushed the suitcase and prepared to leave. Unable to stop her, the encircling reporters merely watched as she went toward the staircase, where she met with Poppy, who had just been released from jail. Poppy glared at her fiercely, barking out sharply, "Kira Olson, you still dare to fight other people? Come on, if you dare, stab me right in the heart. You killed your uncle. So just go ahead and kill your mother too. Ungrateful creature. How'd I ever give birth to such a creature?" As she shouted, she charged toward Kira, grabbing her arm and, heedless of the glass in Kira's hand, started wailing to the reporters. Her uncle only asked her for some money, right? Isn't it natural for her to help out, given she's a PhD now and surely has money? She was raised by me, so she owes me debts of gratitude. How could she have killed her own uncle? She's a beast. I gave birth to you and raised you. You owe me for that. Why did you kill your uncle? You're an animal. Poppy sobbed and continued to hit Kira. Kira clenched her fists and sneered. Didn't I make myself clear before? I got married, cleared the way for Isla, and we're squared off now. What's the matter? Did you lose your memory? Poppy, however, denied everything through her tears. Squared off? Your blood is mine, and I gave birth to you. You're my daughter forever. Everyone, look at this heartless daughter. Now that she's successful, she despises me for being a mistress and wants to cut ties with me. I might be a mistress and couldn't afford you a good living environment, but even dogs know not to despise a poor home, and no children should despise their mother. Aren't you aware of that? I gave birth to you, so I'm the one who gave you this life. If you want to cut ties with me, go ahead, but first, give me your life. Compensate for your uncle's death." After saying this, she grabbed the glass shard in Kira's hand and pulled it out with all her might, intending to stab Kira in the chest. Kira reacted promptly and pushed her back, striking her right in the chest. Poppy stumbled backward, crashing into the wall behind, but she managed to wrestle away the glass shard. The glass cut her hand and blood flowed out. She screamed, "Help! My own daughter murdered her uncle, and now she's trying to kill me. Her own mother. Someone call the police. Don't let her escape." The group of reporters, seeing that Kira was disarmed, found their courage again. They flocked around Kira once more. "You've killed your own uncle, and now you've injured your own mother. Do you even have a heart? Is it because your family is poor, which is why you treat your uncle and mother so poorly? Judging by the way you treat your mother, we suspect that you really did accidentally kill your uncle. Or could it be that you saw the steel bar behind him and deliberately pushed him? The force required to push someone onto a steel bar, skewering them to death, must be very considerable. Why do you hate your uncle so much?" 2-2. The tricky questions from the reporters came one after another, causing Kira's gaze to grow even colder. Rumors and slander were indeed powerful tools. A hint of shadow flashed in her eyes, and she abruptly changed the topic. "Why? Why haven't any of you inquired as to why my dear cousin would give me a letter of understanding?" All of the reporters were left momentarily speechless by her counter-question. Kira turned to leave, but the reporters didn't make a way for her. If that was the case, then she had no choice but to take action. She flexed her wrists, and Josh immediately shouted, "Miss Olson, all these cameras are rolling. Please don't lose control." Kira understood his warning. If she attacked them, regardless of the truth, she would be branded as a journalist beater and a mother abuser. But, so what? She's never cared for public opinion. Kira let out a wicked smile. Kira's eyes were cold and sharp. The smirk at the corner of her mouth was devilishly enticing, carrying a wild vibe. A sense of alienation from the world engulfed her. The truth was, she never really felt she belonged to this world. When she was little, Isla had her classmates isolate and bully her. After leaving the Olsen family, she kept to herself over the years, making few friends. The opinions and views of others were irrelevant to her. She wasn't afraid of the invectives on the internet, nor did she fear the real-life reproaches. The words of the journalists and Poppy hadn't perturbed her at all. So even if she threw a punch and hit someone, which caused her name to trend online, she wouldn't care. With that thought, she took a step forward. The aura of defiance around her suddenly intensified. The journalists immediately hoisted up their cameras, ready to capture the moment she initiated an attack. Once that happened, she would become the target of public outrage. But just then, a deep voice filled with sternness rang out suddenly. "Stop!" Surprised, Kira looked downstairs to see a tall figure striding toward them. Lewis dressed in a tailored suit and was angry when he saw the scene. He waved his hand, and the bodyguards behind him surged forward, isolating Kira and the journalists and filling the narrow staircase. The bodyguards emitted an intimidating aura, and their fierce appearance intimidated the journalists and Poppy. Josh swallowed nervously. "Mr. Horton, what's going on?" Lewis's eyes were dark. "I suspect that you're illegally infringing on Miss Olsen's freedom." Josh quickly defended himself. "We were just doing a normal interview." His voice lacked conviction even as he spoke. "Normal?" Lewis scoffed. "You can discuss that with my legal team." Having said that, he walked over to Kira, picked up her suitcase with one hand while grabbing her wrist with the other, and led her down the stairs. This time, no one dared to obstruct them. As Kira followed him down and out of the building, the sunlight showered upon her, sweeping away the gloom in her chest. She looked up at the blinding sunlight, her expression cold and her voice indifferent. "You shouldn't have come. Those journalists couldn't have cornered me," Lewis replied. "If you hit someone, you'll be criticized." "I'm not afraid of being criticized." "But you shouldn't be criticized." Tutu. Kira was taken aback. She had become accustomed to being criticized and being incompatible with others. She was used to putting up a prickly defense. She never thought she'd hear such words one day. The coldness around her gradually faded, and the alienation in her eyes slowly vanished. Suddenly, she let out a soft chuckle. Lewis asked, "What are you laughing at?" "I'm just thinking how miserable Connor must be right now." Kira looked up and was back to her old self again. "He's probably on the verge of collapsing. If Connor couldn't hang in there and go to Isla, the two of them would fall out. Kira could then produce evidence of Connor being the murderer. Once he was arrested, he would expose the secret that Finley took to his grave." As they talked, they came to Lewis's Bentley. As the car door opened, Kira immediately noticed that old Mrs. Horton was inside. Old Mrs. Horton's gaze fell upon their still holding hands. Her eyes lit up. "Well done, my boy." Kira had just realized that they were holding hands. She instantly withdrew her hand, finding the spot where he'd gripped her wrist was hot. To change the subject from the old lady's amused expression, she asked, "Grandma, what are you doing here?" Old Mrs. Horton promptly replied, "Of course, I came to pick up my granddaughter-in-law and take her home." "Home?" "Yes." Mrs. Horton seemed hopeful. "I'm sick of the hospital. My dear, since you can't stay here anymore, why not come home with me?" Just as Kira was about to refuse, old Mrs. Horton said, "If you don't come home with me, I'll just continue to stay in the hospital." Tutu. Old Mrs. Horton's illness had long vanished. She had been pretending to be sick just to make Lewis and Kira stay by her side and spend more time together. Lewis also said, "Miss Olsen, these reporters can be pretty persistent. Only the Horton family can ensure your safety. Please come stay with us for the time." Kira said, "Okay. Fantastic, my dear granddaughter-in-law. Let's go home." The car quickly entered House 1 Manor, winding along the driveway for 10 minutes before entering the Horton residence. Despite not being her first visit, Kira still marveled at the size of the manor. No wonder Isla was so keen to marry Jake and become the hostess here. She was lost in her thoughts when their car pulled over. Kira and Lewis helped old Mrs. Horton out of the car and into the living room. As they entered, they saw Isla trying to appease Jake. "Jake, don't be mad at me. I've already apologized to the Allen family. They won't blame me anymore." Jake's expression was foul. He initially tried to ignore her, but upon hearing the approaching footsteps and seeing Kira entering alongside Lewis, he stood up in surprise. "Kira, what are you doing in my house?" Before he could continue, old Mrs. Horton snapped. "I invited my granddaughter-in-law here. Got a problem with that?" Jake was taken aback. "Granddaughter-in-law?" Isla quickly said, "Jake, it seems like great-grandma has mistaken Kira for Mr. Horton's wife." Jake immediately glanced at Kira and Lewis, his brows furrowed. Lewis suddenly emphasized each word. "Miss Olson is our guest. She'll be staying with the Hortons for a while." At the sound of these words, Isla clenched her fists even tighter, her eyes glowing with jealousy. She voiced her disagreement. "Is this a good idea? Kira being labeled as a killer might bring trouble to the Horton family. If a reporter catches wind of her staying here, people might think we're harboring her. This might even affect the Horton stock." Before she could say anything else, Lewis cut in with a cold voice. "The matters of the Horton family are none of your concern." Isla felt insulted and bit her lip in frustration. Suddenly, Jake grabbed her hand. "Uncle Lewis, Isla is just concerned for the Horton family. After all, she's my fiancée." A wave of happiness washed over Isla. Despite her efforts to make up for her mistakes recently, Jake had been ignoring her. But now that he suddenly supported her, she realized he was using her to target Kira. Isla was never one to be blinded by love. She knew what she had to do. Jake wouldn't let her go because he still found her useful. Now, what she needed to do was to stay here and get rid of Kira. With this in mind, she gave Jake a nod and was about to speak when her phone suddenly rang. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and saw Connor flashing on the screen. Now was a critical moment to win Jake back. So how could she take another man's call? She immediately hung up and went on. "Mr. Horton, I'm not against Kira. I'm just giving advice from a PR perspective. The Horton family should clear its name from any negativity." She heard the ringtone. Her phone rang again. Isla quickly picked up and hung up again. Before she could say anything, the phone rang once more. Jake's face darkened, and he let go of her hand. "Just answer your phone." Isla immediately clenched her fists, gave Jake an apologetic smile, and answered the phone. "Hey, I'm busy. Can we talk later?" Before she could finish speaking, Connor snapped. "What could be more important than me?" Isla tried to calm him down. "There really is something. I don't care. I need you to come over right now. The reporters are surrounding me, and they're all lashing out at me. Aunt Poppy is also here at my school, blocking my dorm door and calling me an ungrateful wretch. Doesn't she always listen to you? Come here and take her away." Isla bit her lip and looked back at Jake. He was expecting her to do something, and it was the only time in the past few days he'd seemed content with her. She knew she couldn't leave today. Otherwise, Jake would truly be fed up with her. Isla covered the phone and said to Jake, "I'm going to take this call and try to finish it as quickly as possible." Then she walked out the door. Once she left, Kira and Lewis exchanged a glance. Lewis immediately pulled out his phone and began tapping the screen. He then handed Kira a Bluetooth earphone. The conversation between Isla and Connor was immediately transmitted into the earpiece. She could hear Isla's every word. "Connor, stop making a fuss. I have something very important going on now. You were just criticized a few times, right? Just bear with it a little longer." "I can't bear it," Connor yelled angrily. "You don't know what it feels like. The way my classmates look at me, it's all disgusted and disdainful looks. When I go to the canteen, even the people there won't serve me food anymore. Wherever I go, I'm pointed at and whispered about. Isla, let's run away and leave this city. We'll find a place where no one knows us." Isla lost her patience and snapped back. "Enough. If we leave here, where would we go? Do you have money? Without any money, how are we supposed to live? In Ocean Ion, I'm Miss Olson. If I go with you, could you provide me with the life I have now?" Upon hearing this, Kira's eyes narrowed a bit. She thought it would take at least a couple of days before Isla and Connor would have a fallout, but it wasn't even a full day before Connor lost his patience. As she was contemplating this, she heard Connor roar on the phone I don't have any money, but I can make sure that you can't continue this life you're living in Ocean Eye on. Do you think your current lifestyle can last? This life you're living now is actually all stolen from Kira. Kira blinked slightly. What did Isla steal from her? While deep in thought, she heard Isla frantically defend herself. What nonsense are you spouting? Did I hit a nerve? Connor, who had lost his composure at school, was taunting Isla relentlessly, using her pain points against her. Did you not steal Drive South's identity from her to win over Jake? Do you really think Jake would love you? He's just interested in Drive South. And then there's the Allen family. You pretended to be Kira again, Isla. You seem quite familiar with this modus operandi. Isla exploded in fury. Connor Hill, shut your mouth. Connor sneered. Why should I shut up when you've stolen something even more important from her? Do you want me to spell out? Something more important? What could it be? Kira frowned. Isla roared, shut up, shut up. It seemed that Connor still had some expectations for her, so he didn't bring up tea a topic anymore. Isla, I can stay silent, but you have to elope with me. I'll work hard to earn money and provide you with a better life. Isla took a deep breath and said resolutely, you a dropout. What can you give me? What I want is the position of the mistress of the Horton family. Connor Hilly, I'm not going with you. You, aren't you afraid that I'll reveal your secret? Connor growled with anger. Isla chuckled. Go ahead. Connor Hill, do you honestly believe that only you have leverage over me and that I have no leverage over you? Connor was stunned. What do you mean? Isla seemed to have taken out a voice recorder, and after she turned it on there was first an electric current hiss, followed by Connor's voice. Isla, don't worry, I kill my father. He'll never bother you again. Isla exclaimed. How could you murder someone? You'll end up in prison. No, I can pin the blame on Kira. Isla, I've removed these two annoying people for you at once. Remember, it's all for your own good. I love you. The recording abruptly ended. Isla laughed. Connor, if you dare expose my secret, I'll hand this over to the police. If I lose everything, your ending will be 1,000 times worse than mine. Connor sounded horrified. Isla, you can't treat me like this. You and your father forced me first. Isla's voice was exuberant as she said quietly, Connor, we both hold each other's secrets, so let's be at peace. How can I be at peace? I'm surrounded by reporters and attacked by my aunt. I'm going crazy. Then suck it up. Isla's voice was ruthless. It seemed that Connor was frightened by her. Isla, don't you care about my feelings at all? Don't you love me? But Isla didn't want to deal with him tactfully anymore. Are you kidding me? If it wasn't for your father forcing me to tutor you, would I have treated you like that? Every time I see you and your father, I feel sick. You're parasites and bloodsuckers. Connor Hill, don't bother me again. Connor was stunned. You never loved me? Isla sneered. I only love myself. If you obey, we can continue as before. If you threaten me again, don't blame me for being unforgiving. Connor sobbed. Isla, don't scare me. If I'm caught by the police, I'll expose your secret. After saying this, Connor hung up. In the living room, Kira removed her earphones, her eyes shining brightly. She took out her cell phone and sent a message to Holly. You can arrest Connor Hill now. After sending the message, she looked up at Lewis. Lewis immediately understood her meaning and nodded slightly. Their tacit interaction made Jake feel very uncomfortable. There must be something between his uncle and Kira. But how could that be? Kira should be his. He clenched his fist, his eyes welling up with tears. Uncle, wouldn't Auntie be displeased with Kira living here and being mistaken as Jabai Grandma? Lewis smiled. She probably won't mind. Isn't that right, Miss Olson? Kira raised an eyebrow. That should be the case, Mr. Horton. Their conversation was polite and distant, but it was strangely sweet. Jake's anger escalated, and he was about to say something, but Isla walked in from outside. Mr. Horton, the point isn't Mrs. Horton's attitude, but that Kira is now deep in a public opinion controversy. I just checked online. She actually attacked a reporter and even harmed her own mother. Mr. Horton, the video of you taking her away has been released, and now everyone is saying that the person shielding her is the Horton family. Isla handed her phone to Jake. Indeed, The public opinion online was all criticisms toward the Horton family. I was wondering, wasn't she supposed to be a rich second-generation heiress? Why would she live there? It turns out it's not because this murderer is powerful, but because someone is shielding her. The person who came to save her had his face blurred, but I can reveal a bit. That person looked a lot like someone from the H family. The H family, the richest in Oceania. Yes, them, Isla calmly said. One just checked the Horton Group stocks, and there's been a slight fluctuation. If journalists confirm that Kira is at the Hortons, it'll undoubtedly plummet immediately. Mr. Horton, surely you wouldn't jeopardize the Horton Group for a woman, right? Lewis straightened his sleeve, a smile still playing on his lips, but he didn't say a word. Jake echoed, Uncle, you're in charge of the Horton Group. If there's a major blunder, Grandpa will definitely not let you off. Moreover, the shareholders of the Horton Group will also hold you responsible. Seeing that Lewis still remained silent, Isla turned towards Kira. Kira, I know that you can't stay at your rented house anymore. How about this? Come home with me. The Olsen family has already been exposed anyway, so let's not implicate the Horton family anymore. Old Mrs. Horton and Mr. Horton have been so good to you. You wouldn't want to put them in a difficult position, would you? Jake Horton immediately said, Isla, you're always reliable, not like some murderer. Once they manage to latch onto the Horton family, they stick around like plasters. Old Mrs. Horton immediately became enraged. I was the one who invited her. Watch your language. Besides, she's not a murderer. The police haven't convicted her. Isla immediately said, Great-grandma, as long as Kira's suspicion isn't cleared, she'll have to carry this stigma. Kira, who was playing with her phone, chuckled, her voice gentle. How coincidental. It's cleared now. She handed her phone to Isla. It showed a photo taken by a reporter of Connor being arrested. The color drained from Isla's face instantly. Kira didn't expect Connor to be arrested so soon. She didn't realize that as soon as she named Connor as the murderer, Holly had already asked her colleagues at the police station to monitor him. So, when a message arrived, the arrest happened swiftly. What was more, due to the presence of journalists nearby, the whole process was filmed. When the police, followed by the journalists, arrived at Connor's dormitory, Poppy was causing a fuss, hurling insults, and hitting her nephew repeatedly, all while sobbing and cursing loudly. You ungrateful boy. How could you write a letter of forgiveness to Kira? Do you have any respect for your deceased father? You bastard, you sold your conscience for a bit of money. I'll kill you today. You better retract that letter immediately. I want that ungrateful creature to rot in jail. She must pay for her actions. You damn fool. Despite being a man, Connor was rather frail, and, surrounded by a crowd of students, he felt unable to fight back. Poppy, however, was a middle-aged woman with a strong hand, so Connor was left dodging her strikes and covering his head, unable to pull away from his aunt's grip. Fortunately, the arrival of the police provided him with a timely rescue. Enthusiastically, he blurted out, Officers, please, take this crazy woman away. She's assaulting me. Unfortunately, the officers simply walked up to him. Hello, you are suspected of murder. Please cooperate with our investigation. Hearing this, both the surrounding journalists and Poppy were dumbfounded. Poppy regained her composure to speak. Yes, take him away. Make him retract that letter of forgiveness. I won't accept it. I want the murderer to die. Die. At her words, a nearby journalist inquired. Officer, we're confused. Why are you arresting Connor for murder? Shouldn't you be arresting the suspect? Could it be because he was paid for the letter of forgiveness? When will you arrest Miss Olsen? The murder suspect is out on bail awaiting trial. Why are you here arresting the victim? What's the reason? Have you been pressured by the wealthy family? Is there some kind of collusion going on? Poppy shouted. You should be arresting Kira Olsen. She's the murderer. Shoot her. Ordinarily, the police wouldn't need to explain their actions to the public, but considering the widespread repercussions of this case, the officers applied for permission from their superiors before reluctantly addressing the journalists. At the Horton residence, Isla was as pale as a sheet. Looking at the resolve on Kira's face, she felt a pang of fear. Could it be as she had imagined? Jake said, "Uncle, are you watching?" Even the journalists are starting to mention our family. Soon, people will find out that the wealthy family they're referring to is the Horton family. Are you really going to protect a murderer? Lewis spoke in a somber tone. Did you ever consider why the police are arresting Connor rather than Kira? Jake scoffed. Why would that be? Surely it's because they need more evidence from Connor Hill, right? I mean, Connor Hill can't be the murderer, can he? Isla turned even paler at his words. Her gaze fixated nervously on the scene unfolding on her phone screen. Just then, the police officer spoke. We have evidence that Connor Hill is the murderer. He has made false accusations against Miss Olson, so we're taking him into custody for further interrogation. Once these words were spoken, the journalists at the scene were dumbfounded. Everyone began shouting. How is that possible? That's right. The victim is Connor Hill's father. How could he be the murderer? Isn't this a forced confession? Just to clear that woman's name? Poppy, who had just violently confronted Connor, couldn't bear to see her only nephew be executed. She abruptly stood in front of him, glaring angrily at the officers. What nonsense are you speaking? How could Connor kill my brother? Is this a setup by Kira Olson? Did she bribe you to frame him? The police officers remained stoic and serious. We won't be lenient with any criminals, nor would we wrongfully accuse anyone. We have substantial and conclusive evidence. What evidence? Unless you show us, you can't take him away. Poppy continued to block Connor. Connor swallowed hard. Being skilled at deception, he portrayed himself as a victim and pleaded to the camera. I didn't kill him. Aunt, please help me. I've already issued a letter forgiving Kira. What more do they want from me? The journalists were immediately misguided. They gathered around Connor. Right now, we're questioning your judicial fairness. Without sufficient evidence, you can't take him away. From the sound of it, wasn't the letter of forgiveness given involuntarily? There must be some conspiracy. Until this point, we've been stationed outside the wealthy H family's mansion, yet we've seen no sign of any arrests. Instead, you're arresting the victim. Are some people really above the law? Is your plan to arrest the victim's family, so there's no one left to protest? These uncertain voices came out of the phone. Jake continued his questioning. Uncle, did you pressure the police station, or are you slandering Connor Hill? Do you hear that? The public isn't blind. You can't protect her with these underhanded tactics. With so many people watching, will you really disregard the Horton family's reputation for this woman? As he questioned, one of the officers took out a phone and played a recording. The recording captured a conversation between Isla and Connor. Isla, don't worry. I killed my dad. He won't bother you anymore. How could you kill someone? You'll go to jail for that. No, I framed Kira for it. Isla, I've taken care of both annoying people for you. I did all for you. Remember that. I love you. Upon hearing these words, Connor shot a disbelieving look at the officers. At the Horton residence, Isla swayed slightly, almost losing her balance. She stared wide-eyed and in disbelief at the video on her phone. How could this be? That was impossible. How did this recording end up in the hands of the police? If Connor was arrested because of this recording, would he think she was behind it? But then, she swallowed nervously, hastily taking out her phone to call Connor. Just when she was about to dial, Connor's voice came from the phone. It was Isla. She's behind it. That damn woman. I want to see Kira Olson. I need to speak to her. No one paid attention to Connor's desperate roar at that moment. When the police played the recording, they had already convinced the reporters. The police continued. Of course, this recording alone cannot prove that he's the murderer. We also found his discarded phone, and after restoring its settings, we uncovered several recordings of the victim from that day that matched what Miss Olson had said earlier. This is enough to prove that he had killed the victim before Miss Olson arrived and tried to frame her. We have sufficient evidence to make an arrest. And here is the warrant. After the police showed the warrant, the reporters in front of them immediately dispersed. The police swiftly apprehended Connor and left quickly. The live broadcast ended there. The Horton family. The sudden turn of events caught everyone off guard. Lewis looked at Jake with a grave expression. Miss Olson isn't the murderer. and I hope I won't hear that word from you again." Jake fell silent. Just then, the butler suddenly entered the room. "Sir, there are police officers outside. They want Miss Olson to go to the police station and assist with the investigation." Upon hearing this, Jake found his courage again. "Uncle, even if she isn't the murderer, she's still connected to this case. It's unlucky for someone to keep going to the police station. It's not suitable for her to stay in the Horton residence." But as soon as he finished speaking, the butler coughed and said sheepishly, "They're looking for Miss Isla Olson." Jake Horton was shocked. He looked at Isla, baffled, and asked, "What does this case have to do with you? Why do they want you there?" Isla's face turned pale. She was disoriented and stumbled, staring blankly at Jake. "Jake, Her mind was full of Connor, and she couldn't bring herself to comfort Jake immediately. Kira, observing the scene, said with a smile, "Don't be nervous. The police want to see Isla, probably for the case investigation. In that recording, just now, the person talking to Connor on the phone was Isla, right? Isla, after Connor committed the murder, why did he call you?" Isla swallowed nervously, clenched her fists, and upon seeing Jake's confused gaze, she rushed to explain, I don't know. I felt sorry for him before and gave him some money, and he just clung to me." Kira looked down. "So, you're saying that you gave the recording to the police? After all, only you would have a recording of your conversation, right?" Isla wanted to deny it, but Kira took a step closer, looking straight in her eyes. "After all, if it wasn't you, why would you cover for him?" 2-2. Isla realized she had been backed into a corner. After all, she couldn't provide a better explanation. She clenched her fists and could only nod, "Yes, it was me. No wonder the police came to ask for your cooperation in the investigation. When you get to the station, you'll certainly tell the police the truth, won't you?" Isla was speechless. She took a deep breath and turned around sheepishly, preparing to follow the butler out when Kira suddenly looked at Jake. "Aren't you going with her?" Jake was taken aback. Kira raised an eyebrow. "She's your fiancée. Don't you care about her? After all, the police station is an ominous place." Provoked by her words, Jake immediately went to Isla Olson's side. "I'll go with you." Isla was shocked. She didn't need him there. But Jake Horton didn't give her the chance to refuse and followed her out the door. Inside the police station, in the interrogation room, a police officer asked, "Please tell us, what exactly is your relationship with Connor?" Isla explained, "I have no relationship with him. Back in junior high, I saw him being ostracized by classmates and felt pity for him, so I helped him with a few lessons, but then he clung to me, calling me frequently over the years." The police officer asked, "After he committed murder, he called you first. Why didn't you encourage him to turn himself in?" With Jake standing right beside her, Isla dared not speak carelessly and continued to distance herself from the incident. "I never imagined he would go so far as to kill his own father. I was truly shocked. It's the first time in my life I've heard of someone committing murder and then trying to frame someone else. I've been blaming myself this whole time. I urged him to turn himself in, but he wouldn't listen and even threatened to kill me if I spoke out. Comrade officer, can you please not inform him of our conversation today? I'm afraid he'll retaliate against me after he's released. Of course, we'll protect the witness." The police officer then said, "So the anonymous recording we received was actually sent by you, right?" Isla paused for a moment, then admitted with reluctance, "Yes, I wanted to do something to help solve the case. After receiving the recording you sent, we were able to identify the killer and promptly find his discarded cell phone. Otherwise, a few more days and a little rain would have ruined the phone and all the incriminating audio files inside it, making us lose the most effective evidence." The police officer interviewing Isla stood up. "On behalf of the police station, I thank you for providing the evidence." Isla waved her hand. "It's nothing. It's what any citizen should do." The police officer pointed toward the door. "Good. Thank you for your cooperation. I'll escort you out." Isla and Jake walked out together, and on the way, she asked, "Sir, you won't tell Connor about our conversation, will you? He's very gloomy, and his gaze is really intimidating, so I hope you could take protective measures. I don't want him to find out." The police officer nodded. I assure you, he won't be told. Isla left the police station looking uneasy. After walking out of the police station, she looked back again. It was already dark outside. The entrance was brightly lit, and the inside was just as bright, with many officers moving about, taking notes and working diligently. She wondered in which interrogation room Connor could be. However, Isla tightened her jaw, took a deep breath, and a hint of scorn flashed through her eyes. That was for the best. Sending Connor Hill away would mean he could no longer pester her. What are you thinking about? Get in the car. The sound of Jake's voice brought Isla back to her senses. She lowered her head. Jake, I'm a bit scared of being retaliated against. Don't worry. I'm here. Jake protected her and led her to the car. They didn't see that on the third floor of the police station, in a room with the lights off, Connor stood at the window, gazing down with a sinister look. Snap! The light was turned on in the room. Kira, Lewis, and Holly were sitting in the room watching him. Kira tapped the table. You heard the interrogation just now, right? You also saw what's happening downstairs, so do you have something you want to say to me? Connor's gaze was dark as he looked downstairs. At this moment, he probably knew that everything was settled, and there were no more reasons to resist or deny it, so he appeared much calmer than he did during the live broadcast. He was handcuffed, standing there. He turned around and then obediently sat at the interrogation table, his face showing a mix of anger and struggle. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Holly. What you did is against the rules. Holly lowered the gaze. We were in debt to Miss Olson and Mr. Horton. They didn't hold us accountable, so helping her with this small favor is nothing. Even if the department punishes me, at most I'll get a demerit. I'm not afraid. Connor angrily slapped the table. You can't do this to me. It's too cruel. Cruel. Kira stepped forward, closing in on him. Is it more cruel than you murdering your own father with your own hands? Connor Hill, stop playing the innocent here. You've seen Isla's true color. You don't need to keep her secret anymore. But Connor clutched at his head. I don't believe it. She couldn't possibly have set me up. How could she? There's no benefit to her in doing this. You people must be playing tricks. Kira slowly said, No benefit? Who says so? She stood up straight and looked toward Lewis. Mr. Horton, these past few days, Isla has been trying to reconcile with Jake, but it seems he hasn't agreed to meet her, has he? Lewis went along. The Horton family wouldn't welcome a woman who steals others' credit. Kira smiled. What about now? After her successful report, the police station will award her a commendation for bravery. After finishing her statement, Kira winked at Lewis. She stood gracefully, her cunning and seductive eyes giving others a sense of profound affection. Her gesture at that moment was more enchanting than any other people, which was quite tempting. Lewis swallowed, and his eyes darkened slightly. He withdrew his gaze and played along. The Horton family needs this kind of positive image. Didn't you see? Jake's attitude toward her has softened. Kira raised an eyebrow, expressing her thanks to him. She then looked at Connor. Hear that? She did all this to get that award, and then to knock on Horton family's door. Connor's eyes were about to split with fury. Shut up. Kira slowly closed in. So, you're really okay with her stepping on you to climb up? You'd spend the rest of your life in prison, while she could marry into the Horton family and become the young madam. I said shut up. Connor suddenly stood up. Even wearing handcuffs, he lunged at Kira Olson. Watch out. Be careful. Holly and Lewis didn't expect his sudden rage, and they immediately cried out in warning. But in the next moment, they saw Kira raise her hand and seize Connor's wrist, pressing it hard onto the table. Bang! The handcuffs and table collided, making a loud noise. Connor tried to struggle again, but Kira casually pinned him down, and he couldn't move an inch. He bared his teeth in a smile. Kira, you think by doing this, I'll tell you that secret? Give it up. I won't say anything. Kira paused slightly. Holly had already stepped forward, quickly binding the handcuffs to the interrogation table's chair, preventing him from lashing out again. Kira released her hold on him, her brow furrowed in inquiry. You asked me to come here, saying you had something to say. I don't anymore. Connor looked at her and Holly. I confess, but as the victim's son, I have the right to write a letter of mercy for myself, right? That bastard drove me to a desperate situation. That's why I did it. I shouldn't be sentenced to death, right? Kira frowned. Something seemed off about Connor. She gave Holly a meaningful glance, and the two of them stepped out of the interrogation room. Kira asked first, "Will you really be disciplined because of this?" "No," Holly said, her pretty face still tense as she explained. "You didn't hold us accountable, and you presented the evidence. Captain Lincoln and the others feel guilty about it. They'd be more than willing to help with this small favor. Besides, we have never failed to protect the privacy of those who report crimes. Isla isn't the person who provided the evidence, anyway." Kira then breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that Holly hadn't really been implicated. She frowned. Doesn't Connor's attitude seem a bit off? Upon hearing this, Holly said, "That's exactly what I was about to tell you. I just asked the colleagues who arrested him, and they said that at the time of his arrest, he was screaming about wanting to see you. But then suddenly, he calmed down and stopped shouting as if he had resigned himself to his fate." Kira frowned and suddenly asked, "Can I see his phone?" "Sure." When Connor was arrested, all his personal belongings were confiscated. The colleague who fetched Connor's phone had also been involved in the arrest, and he explained it was after looking at his phone that Connor suddenly calmed down. Scratching his head, he added, "After we arrested him and asked him to hand over his phone, there was a message he saw. He tried to delete it, but we stopped him." Kira turned on his phone and quickly checked his call history and messages, but found nothing. Then she opened WhatsApp. His WhatsApp was blowing up. Classmates and relatives were bombarding him with inquiries in group chats. Kira ignored them all and scrolled down. She came across the last message he had opened, which was sent by Isla. As Kira opened it, her pupils shrank slightly at the sight of the picture. She whirled around and strode back into the interrogation room, positioning herself directly in front of Connor. "Are you not telling me because Isla is pregnant? Is it your child?" The last message Isla sent to Connor was a pregnancy test result. The date of conception was clearly written on it. Connor laughed. "What are you talking about? I don't understand. Isla's child is, of course, Mr. Horton's, since she's about to marry him and become his wife. According to the date, it was his child, although Connor despised Isla so much he wished she would die with him. It was different now that Isla was carrying his child. All his life, he could only live in his father's shadow, looked down upon by others. Since childhood, he swore never to let his own child live this life. Now his child was about to become a Horton, destined for glory and riches from birth. So even if Isla betrayed him, what did it matter? As long as she could give birth to his child. Kira observed Connor's expression, knowing he wouldn't speak anymore. But she wasn't disappointed. Instead, she suddenly leaned forward, her whole demeanor becoming confrontational. "Connor, let me tell you a secret." "What?" "Actually, we've been monitoring your phone. Every conversation you had with Isla, I heard it all." Connor froze, but Kira smirked. "Did you think that if you didn't tell me the secret, I wouldn't be able to guess it? You said Isla stole my life, so this secret is obviously related to my own identity." Connor's pupils contracted sharply. Kira knew then that she had guessed correctly. She and Isla Olsen were both Taylor's daughters, and the only possible issue concerning their identity was. Kira's eyes flashed with a bright light, and she felt as if her life had suddenly burst into splendid color. Could it be as she had guessed? Mrs. Olsen was her mother. Only this reason could explain why Isla had been blackmailed by Finley for so many years, and also why Connor would say that Isla had stolen Kira's life. Kira felt a seed of hope deep within her suddenly take root and sprout rapidly. "If you say it is, then it is." However, Connor spoke up, his eyes showing a hint of relaxation. His sudden change of demeanor made Kira frown, unable to grasp his intentions for a moment. Connor was like a rat in the dark. After killing Finley, he put on an act of unjust fear, deceiving both Captain Lincoln and Holly. At this moment, his demeanor made Kira uncertain of the truth. But she wasn't in a hurry. "Connor, I'll find out after a DNA test. What use is there in hiding it so well?" Kira stood up straight, narrowing her eyes. You always said that your dad treated you badly and that you're burdened by so much debt, which is why you killed him, but you've always known, haven't you? Isla was forced by your dad to tutor you. Your dad had so much gambling debt, yet you always had money for school fees and living expenses, even if it was meager. Even in the end, your dad told you that secret, also wanting you to continue blackmailing Isla. So, it's not that you had no choice. You've always been a bad person. Upon hearing this, Connor suddenly looked up, his gaze frighteningly fixed on her. But Kira had already turned and left the interrogation room. She nodded to Holly, who then had people take Connor to the detention center. Kira asked, "What sentence will he receive?" Holly said, "Death sentence with a suspension, usually. When the execution is suspended, he won't be executed. He'll most likely face life imprisonment in the end, as long as he doesn't die." Kira said, "If I guessed wrong, that secret still has to be squeezed out of him in the end." Unable to help herself, Holly asked, "Isn't he completely devoted to Isla? Will he still talk?" Kira glanced at her. "You really don't know Isla very well." Holly paused, then turned her head away. "Back in middle school, I only knew you, and she was only your sister." Speaking of the past, Kira couldn't help but probe. Back then, Holly stiffened slightly. Kira knew she cared a lot about the events of that year, so she said softly with downcast eyes, "Back then, I didn't mean to deceive you." Holly's eyes immediately reddened. "Then why didn't you properly take the middle school examination? We had an agreement to get into the best high schools together and to study hard together. I know how excellent your grades were." Kira gave a wry smile. "Can't you just think of it as a performance slip?" "No," Holly Sims said earnestly. "You had already self-studied the high school curriculum in middle school. You could have done well even with one eye closed. How could you not do well in your exam?" Kira sighed silently. Although she moved out from the Olsen family during middle school, she and Isla were still at the same school. Back then, during the middle school exams, she had agreed with Holly to get into the best high school. But the night before the exam, Poppy came to her, demanding that she not take the exam. If she dared to tangle with Isla and attend the same high school, Poppy wouldn't let her off the hook. Kira feared that telling Holly in advance might affect her performance. She just made sure she got a score that was low enough. After the results came out, she tried to explain, but Holly just wouldn't listen to her. Later on, Kira was busy working part-time jobs to earn money for living expenses and tuition and gradually lost contact with Holly. But Holly was the first female friend in Kira's life, and Kira always thought of her. She lowered her head and explained, "You saw it for yourself. Poppy is my mother, and she practically wishes me dead. She wouldn't let me and Isla attend the same high school." Holly immediately said, "Then you could have told me, and we could have attended an ordinary high school together." "Holly Sims." Kira Olsen suddenly called out her name gravely, then slowly lifted her head. "You were born a specially privileged woman, but my life was in shambles to its very core. I couldn't bear the weight of your dreams and brilliant life." Holly was stunned. During the university entrance exams, she had seen too many young couples who, despite scoring high, would choose a mediocre university for the sake of love. Back then, it felt romantic, but only after leaving school did she realize how naive that had been. She suddenly understood Kira, and her eyes became teary. "I understand now." Kira patted her shoulder and continued to head out. Holly suddenly asked in a muffled voice, "How about your wedding banquet with Mr. Horton? It was a lot of fun." Kira paused. Holly continued, "We'd agreed that when either of us got married, we would be each other's bridesmaid. You thought I had blacklisted all your contact information. Huh? That's why you didn't call me." Kira felt a warmth in her eyes. "We haven't even had a wedding ceremony yet." "What?" Holly lifted her head, her eyes suddenly lighting up. "That's good." After saying so, she felt embarrassed, so she looked upward. I don't mean you have to have me as your bridesmaid. I'm saying, when you got married, at least you could send me an invitation. But I do want you to be my bridesmaid," Kira said jokingly. "So, Miss Holly Sims, can you unblock me? Otherwise, how am I supposed to send an invitation?" Holly immediately muttered, "I've already done that." She sulked all summer, but already unblocked Kira's number in their freshman year of high school. But Kira had never reached out to her. Kira didn't catch what she said. What? Holly looked up, saying pretentiously, I said I would let you off. But if you wanted to be your bridesmaid, you have to prepare a big bonus. Okay. Kira smiled, teasing Holly. Then you'd better not dress too beautifully that day. Don't steal my thunder. Holly Sims instantly blushed. What are you talking about? I'm busy. I've got to go. After she ran off, Kira Olsen finally stood up straight. Turning around, she caught sight of Lewis standing there, quietly watching her. Kira thought about what she had just said to Holly about the wedding and instantly felt uneasy. She hurriedly explained, Mr. Horton, don't misunderstand. I didn't mean I don't want a divorce. Lewis's eyes were brooding, and he lowered his gaze. I know. The two left the police station and got into the car. Lewis asked, Are we going to the Olsen family? Yes. Kira couldn't wait any longer. She needed to get a DNA test with Mrs. Olsen. The Bentley sped along the road. Kira, who usually drove carefully due to her anemia, still felt it was too slow. She had never looked forward to anything as much as she did today in her entire life. If she was indeed Mrs. Olsen's daughter, the mere thought of the possibility put a smile in her eyes. The car quickly arrived at the Olsen residence. Kira hopped out and waved to Lewis. Mr. Horton, wait for me here. After saying that, she turned to enter the house. But just at that moment, the front door of the Olsen house suddenly opened, and Taylor and Mrs. Olsen hurried out. Taylor's arm was covered in blood, and his face was extremely pale. Mrs. Olsen, supporting his uninjured arm, looked frantic. Taylor, how are you feeling? Are you dizzy? We're going to hospital right now. The Olsen family's driver had taken the day off and wasn't there. Aunt South couldn't drive. Taylor's arms were trembling so much that he couldn't possibly drive. As Mrs. Olsen grew anxious, she saw Kira and Lewis, and her eyes lit up. Kira, hurry, take your father and me to the hospital. In this life-threatening situation, Kira didn't think about anything else and immediately ushered the two into the car. They arrived at the hospital very quickly. Taylor must have lost a lot of blood and was now somewhat weak. Mrs. Olsen alone couldn't support him. Seeing this, Kira, without any hint of distaste, helped Taylor onto the emergency room stretcher. A nurse immediately rushed over, and upon seeing the situation, exclaimed in surprise, The patient needs a transfusion. Do you know your blood type? I do, Taylor answered weakly. It's type AB. The nurse immediately sprang into action, shouting, AB blood, quickly bring it from the blood bank. The patient has lost so much blood that he needs immediate replenishment. Taylor was helped onto the emergency bed, and the nurses pushed it toward the operating room at a run. Mrs. Olsen followed close by the gurney, clasping Taylor's hands, urging desperately, Taylor, you mustn't fall asleep. Don't sleep. The two soon disappeared down the corridor. Kira stood dazedly at the entrance of the hospital, watching the direction they had gone, her pretty face turning pale. All the joy and anticipation she had just moments ago vanished in an instant. She widened her eyes, looking in the direction Taylor had gone in disbelief. It was as if she had been plunged into an icy river amidst a snowy landscape. A chill suddenly infiltrated her heart. She stood there dazed. Lewis, who had entered with her, noticed her distress and immediately asked, Miss Olsen? What's wrong? Kira stared ahead. Did you hear that? What? His blood type is AB. Lewis paused, taken aback. But I am O-type blood. A smile tried to form on Kira's face, but it looked worse than tears. Lewis clenched his jaw tightly. It was then that Poppy, having received the news, burst in. Taylor! Oh, Taylor, how are you? Where are you? Don't scare me. Seeing Kira, she immediately rushed over and grabbed her arm. Where's your dad? Which ward is he in? Is he all right? Kira looked straight at her, suddenly letting out a low laugh. Are you sure Mr. Olsen is my dad? These words instantly filled Poppy's eyes with panic. What nonsense are you talking about? Of course, he's your dad. Kira scoffed, her voice filled with helplessness. Are you sure a father with AB blood type can have an O-type blood daughter? These words turned Poppy's face pale. Almost reflexively, she covered Kira's mouth forcefully, then pulled her outside the hospital. Dazed, Kira followed her to a deserted area outside, where Poppy finally let go. Her expression panicked. She lowered her voice to a furious whisper. "Shut up. If you're not Taylor's daughter, how can I continue to stay with the Olsen family?" Kira's eyes hardened. "So, he really isn't my father. Then who is my father?" Poppy's eyes flickered. She was clearly guilty and flustered. "How should I know? I was seeing several men at that time." She continued, her expression gradually becoming resolute. "That's right. I was just using you to get into the Olsen family. How else could a family like ours be connected to the Olsen family? That's why I always told you to keep your distance from your dad when you were growing up. I was afraid of being discovered. I told you to cater to Isla's every whim for the same reason. The Olsen family doesn't owe you anything. It is you who owe the Olsen family." Kira Olsen clenched her fists. "When I was 4 years old, you deliberately sent me to traffickers. Was it for this reason too? Right, if you disappeared, I wouldn't have to worry about being discovered." After declaring this brazenly, Poppy Hill waved her hand impatiently. "Don't look like someone whose dad's dead. Since you and Taylor weren't even close, what does it matter if he's your biological father? Now that you've left the Olsen family, you're no longer related to them. I warn you, don't spout any nonsense in front of the Olsens and ruin my opportunity." With those words, Poppy rushed back toward Taylor's hospital ward. Kira stood still, stunned. She seemed to have completely forgotten her original purpose of visiting the Olsen residence. Seeing this, Lewis suddenly took her wrist and led her toward the ward. "Weren't you going to do a DNA test with Mrs. Olsen? Come on." Kira, however, remained standing in place, motionless. She clenched her fists tightly, the moonlight casting upon her cool countenance, making her voice seem as if it were coated in a layer of ice. "Don't bother." Lewis pondered for a moment before speaking. "Actually, even if he's not your father, Mrs. Olsen could still possibly be your—" "Don't say it." Kira Olsen interrupted him. The moment he uttered "mother," it would tarnish Mrs. Olsen's character. She lowered her eyes and spoke slowly. "Although Taylor was mean to me, he has always loved Mrs. Olsen, and that has never changed. With such a husband, how could Mrs. Olsen possibly have an affair? Let's not insult her." Lewis's jaw tensed as he tried to argue, but he remained silent. Kira Olsen's lips curled into a self-deprecating smile. "One always thought that the status of an illegitimate daughter was already quite sordid, but I never imagined it could get even worse." Lewis wanted to say something to comfort her, but Kira gestured with her hand. "I need a moment alone." "All right," Lewis said quietly, taking a step back silently to give her ample space. Poppy approached the hospital room nervously, and from outside the door, she heard the conversation between Mrs. Olsen and Taylor, which mentioned Kira. Mrs. Olsen said, "After all, you and Kira are father and daughter. She was very nervous about you just now. You should be nicer to her in the future." Taylor, who had stopped bleeding and whose vital signs were stable, sighed. "You should be nicer to Isla." Mrs. Olsen suddenly lowered her voice. "Taylor, don't be like this. You know very well that I was pregnant before marrying you, and I haven't been able to give you a child after that. Kira is your real daughter." "Don't talk like that," Taylor said with a smile. "When we got married, I already said that your daughter would be my daughter. Surely, over these years, I've kept my word." Mrs. Olsen's eyes welled up with grateful tears. "You've kept your word, but it's so unfair to Kira, and it's too unfair to you. The fact that you could give up the prosperity of Clance and live with me in simplicity in Oceanion, I'm already very content. What's unfair about that? Let's not talk about this anymore." Taylor smiled. "Besides, you've been so good to Kira over the years. Wasn't that also out of a sense of redress? Surely, she's the result of Poppy's scheming against me. I've never considered her as my daughter. You really don't need to do this." Mrs. Olsen looked stunned. At first, she might have indeed been kind to Kira with that thought in mind, but as they gradually got to know each other, she genuinely grew fond of Kira. Poppy stood outside the door, her face flushing red with anger. She indeed had seduced Taylor by drugging him back then, and after getting pregnant, she even went through with amniocentesis to confirm the child was Taylor's. But even after that, Taylor still wouldn't accept her. It was Mrs. Olson who later brought her into the Olson family. Mrs. Olson might seem virtuous, but in truth, her acceptance of her and the child was due to her guilt toward Taylor. All the benefits and the reputation for virtue had been taken by her. Fortunately, the thought of how she had just berated Kira, coupled with the sight of Kira's disbelief, rose a twisted sense of elation within Poppy. She wouldn't let Kira off the hook. She intended to make Kira live a lifetime in the pain and struggle of her identity. Nor would she let Mrs. Olson go. She intended to ensure that Mrs. Olson and Kira, the mother and daughter, could never know their real relationship. A hint of madness crept onto Poppy's face, twisting into a crazed smile. Kira didn't know how long she had stood there. She was right at the edge of the hospital entrance steps, which was a place untouched by the light. She watched those people coming and going through the hospital entrance. They were either joyful or sorrowful, their expressions so vivid and bright. Her mood, however, was as dull as ashes. She didn't know how long had passed when suddenly a warmth landed on her shoulder. Kira turned her head and realized that Lewis had draped his jacket over her, the warmth shielding her from the cruelty of this world. Actually, Lewis hesitated for a long time before he finally spoke, but only managed to utter a single word. He didn't know how to comfort her. While he was still struggling, Kira said, "I'm fine, don't worry." Lewis was startled, and then saw Kira slowly lift her head. She walked from the darkness toward the light, the defeatist aura around her slowly dissipating. Appreciation flashed in Lewis's eyes. He had initially been attracted to Kira because of her resilience. It seemed that no matter what, if she was knocked down, she could immediately stand up again. She wasn't a fragile and powerless flower. Inside her slender body seemed to be a wealth of energy, making her overly seductive exterior seem unapproachable and dazzling. Lewis's lips curved with an almost imperceptible smile, and he found a topic to discuss. "Miss Olson, what do you think is the secret that Finley Hill and Connor Hill keep talking about?" "I'm not in a hurry." Kira cocked her head, looking wild and laughing unrestrainedly. "Connor Hill will tell me in the end." Lewis played along with her. "Really? I would love to hear more." "You don't know Isla," Kira Olson said slowly. "After this is over, she won't allow something dangerous to affect her future." Lewis was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "Just wait and see." Kira teased him. "In at most half a month, Isla will destroy herself." Lewis nodded. "I'll await the good news." Neither of them spoke again, just quietly looking at each other. Tonight was probably the first time Kira didn't feel lonely in the dead of night, as if on the road of life. She didn't always have to walk forward alone. Not far away, Mr. and Mrs. Allen took a walk in the hospital after Rebecca had gone to sleep. Coincidentally, they arrived at the emergency room entrance. Just when they were about to walk straight past it, Mrs. Allen suddenly turned her head, looking at Kira in surprise. "Wait." Mr. Allen was startled and followed her gaze. The night was a bit dark, and Kira stood under a street lamp, its dim light spilling across the silhouette of her face, softening her sharp features significantly. Especially at that moment when she looked at Lewis, her eyes were tender and resolute. Her neck was slender, and her demeanor was independent, carrying a distinctive charm about her. The sight froze Mr. Allen on the spot. The image of meeting Lady South more than 20 years ago suddenly flashed in his mind. It was such an evening, with Lady South appearing aloof from the world. The woman in her 40s stood sideways to him, gazing at the sky. The two silhouettes began to overlap. It seemed like Lady South's face in his memory became clearer. Mr. Allen was instantly excited. He hurriedly took a few steps toward Kira and subconsciously called out, "Lady South." Kira, hearing that name, paused slightly. Kira turned her head and saw Mr. Allen, looking somewhat disconcerted. She frowned and hesitated before asking, "Uncle Allen, what did you just call me?" Mr. Allen snapped back to reality. He looked at Kira in confusion, sizing her up uncertainly. "Lady." Someone tugged on his sleeve. Mrs. Allen walked up to him, cutting off his words. "It's nothing. Your Uncle Allen's eyes are playing tricks on him." "Kira, what are you doing here?" Kira Olson replied, Mr. Olson was hospitalized, so I just brought him over. She looked up at the floors above, then lowered her eyes. But now I need to go now. And, okay, Mrs. Allen said with a smile. It's getting dark. You should head home and get some rest. Kira asked, when will you return to Clance? Mrs. Allen smiled and said, there's no rush. Although the rehabilitation medical care here in Ocean Ion isn't as good as in Clance, it's sufficient for Rebecca. She was worried about you and didn't want to leave. Now, even though you're fine, we can't abruptly change the rehabilitation training plan she has started, so we're not leaving yet. Kira nodded. Then I'll come visit Rebecca when I have some free time. Sure. After Kira and Lewis left, Mrs. Allen glared at Mr. Allen. What nonsense were you spouting? Mr. Allen said with a sense of grievance. How could I not say it? Mrs. Allen sighed. I've looked into the Olson family situation. It's clear now. Kira's status is awkward, and she does resemble Mrs. Olson at first glance, but if you look closely, it's only a similarity of temperament. Lady South is Mrs. Olson's mother, and Kira should also have a similar temperament to her. You don't have any proof, and if you blurt it out and it turns out to be a mix-up, what will you do then? Mr. Allen rubbed his nose. But we can't just keep silent, can we? Mrs. Allen responded irritably. It's not that I don't want you to speak up. Isn't the photo being restored? Once it's restored, you could take it to Kira. Isn't that more convincing? Mr. Allen pouted. After all, you just don't believe me. Mrs. Allen sighed. Every family cherishes their children the most. When a child is born, there are nurses, nannies, and doctors watching. Even if Mrs. Olson came to Ocean Ion alone without anyone else, given her background and family status, at the very least, the child's father would be at the hospital bed. Do you realize how difficult it is to switch babies? This idea is too far-fetched, and in the end, it could very well just turn out to be a false alarm. Mr. Allen pouted and conceded. All right, you're always right. Just wait for the photo. Unable to help himself, he took out his phone and tagged Frankie in the group chat. How long will the photo restoration take? Can you speed up the process? Frankie's reply came quickly. The damage to your photo is quite severe. The restorer said that it would take at least 5 days to fix it. Mr. Allen found himself impatient for the first time. 5 days it is then. Kira and Lewis returned to the Horton family manor. The car stopped directly in old Mrs. Horton's courtyard. Once they got out of the vehicle and entered the living room, they saw old Mrs. Horton hadn't gone to bed yet. She was dozing off on the sofa, nodding her head. Fiona was by her side, smiling wryly. Seeing the two of them, she finally relaxed. Old Mrs. Horton, Mr. Horton, and Miss Olson have returned. Now you can rest easy, right? Please go back to your room to sleep. Old Mrs. Horton suddenly woke up. She rose to her feet and walked towards them. Lewis stepped forward to support her. Grandma, take it easy. But old Mrs. Horton walked right past him and approached Kira, grabbing her wrist. Granddaughter-in-law, you've finally returned. Lewis was speechless. Fiona couldn't help but laugh. Miss Olson, old Mrs. Horton has been mentioning you 100 times tonight. To those who don't know, they'd think you were her granddaughter. Even with Mr. Horton here, you're the one she fancies more. Old Mrs. Horton immediately said, Why would I prefer that brat when I can have my lovely granddaughter-in-law? Lewis tugged at the corner of his mouth. Grandma, now that you have a granddaughter-in-law, you've forgotten your grandson. At these words, old Mrs. Horton's eyes brightened. So, you admit she's your... Lewis suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. Old Mrs. Horton didn't care about his feelings and turned to Kira. Granddaughter-in-law, this brat has taken a liking to you. And what about you? Do you like this brat? Lewis touched his nose and glanced subconsciously at Kira. Kira noticed that intense gaze and blushed. She cleared her throat. Grandma, it's getting late. I'll light the calming incense for you, and then you should go to bed. Old Mrs. Horton didn't want to embarrass her granddaughter-in-law despite Lewis's feelings, so she nodded. All right. Kira helped old Mrs. Horton into her bedroom. Suddenly, the only one left in the living room was Lewis. His eyes darkened as he watched the two leave. Thinking about how Kira hadn't answered Grandma's question just now, he suddenly felt a bit disappointed. At that moment, Fiona spoke up. Sir, are you staying here tonight? or will you go back to sleep at the main house? The Horton family manor was too big. Old Mrs. Horton needed peace for her recuperation, so a small courtyard within the manor was chosen to construct a 3-story villa specially for her. Usually, old Mrs. Horton and the family doctor, along with a nanny, lived there. It was quiet and undisturbed. Ever since Lewis returned to the country and took over the Horton Group to strengthen his position as head of the household, he had been living in the man bedroom of the adjacent main house. Hearing the sudden question, Lewis coughed. Grandma's condition is unstable, and I'm not at ease. I'll stay here so I can keep an eye on her at night. Fiona smiled, lowering her head, and didn't expose his little ruse. Okay. Lewis had a bedroom here. He walked to the door and suddenly paused. Fiona instantly understood. Miss Olson's room is next to yours. Lewis looked down. Fiona, you're quite talkative tonight. Fiona kept smiling. After Kira sent old Mrs. Horton to bed, she followed Fiona to the room she would temporarily stay in. Nothing happened that night. When Kira woke up the next day, old Mrs. Horton still hadn't gotten up. Kira tiptoed into her room to check on her. As she approached, old Mrs. Horton opened her eyes. Seeing Kira, she immediately smiled with a hint of surprise. Granddaughter-in-law, you've come back. Kira was taken aback. Come back? Yes. Old Mrs. Horton held her hand. After you and the brat got married, you disappeared. I've been looking for you for a month, and now you've finally come back. 1. Kira suddenly realized old Mrs. Horton was having an episode again. Her memory had reverted to the month after she and Lewis got their marriage certificate. Kira's eyes darkened slightly, and she suddenly asked, Grandma, do you remember how I and Lewis got our marriage certificate? She hadn't expected to get much of a response, but to her surprise,